Live from twitch.tv and youtube.com, it's Vtuber Talk. Tonight's guest is Almantas. And now, hungry for more, here's your host, Jay. Hello and welcome to Vtuber Talk. I'm your host Jay and thank you so much for joining us this evening. For those of you who haven't been here before, Vtuber Talk is designed after classic late night talk shows. Everything here is live, casual, and the goal is to simply have fun conversations that will entertain people who are already familiar with the guest while still being accessible for new fans. Please welcome my guest for this evening, Almantas.
Hello. Thank you, Jay, for having me on.
The pleasure's all mine.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you invited me, so I guess I shouldn't be overplaying it. But yes, I am Almantas. I am a former professor of sociology and currently a VTuber. And I'm an old man. I do a lot of old things. I am probably mostly known for doing calligraphy. And yeah, now I'm here. I am here.
Well, perfect. You just set me up for the first thing I was going to ask anyways, because as you mentioned, you have as a very public-facing thing that you were a professor of sociology. Sociology doesn't include calligraphy, and out of 175 episodes, I have never before had somebody who did calligraphy as part of their content in any capacity, much less with the sort of consistency and I would say iconicness at this point that it is for you. So how does calligraphy come into your life?
It entered my life twice. There were two kind of points where it entered my life. The first point was my second language is Japanese. And my Japanese is not very good at the moment. I'm working on getting it back up to decent to good, but at the moment it's pretty rusty. But when I took Japanese as a younger man, I had to you take cultural lessons, right? When you take a language course, you don't just learn the language, you will also take cultural lessons. And so, we had lessons in Japanese cooking and lessons and like, what are some movies, let's watch some movies from Japan, that kind of thing. And one of the lessons that we had was calligraphy, was shodo. And I really took to it quite a bit. I really enjoyed it. And that had been a small little bit of fascination for me on the back end, and it was something I did enjoy doing in my Japanese coursework. And then later in life, I was taking a lot of notes, like hundreds of pages a week, levels of note-taking. And my reaction to this was, since I was taking so many notes, I was just constantly taking notes, was I eventually said, why don't I make my headers look nice? Why not? Why not have nice headers? And so I picked up a felt tip calligraphy marker at a bookstore, and I would start adding. And I looked up some lessons and picked up a library book on the art of lettering and calligraphy, and I started learning from there. And it has now been decades, and it was never intended to be something that I took super seriously until quite recently. I did not take it very seriously. It's just something I've been doing for decades, kind of off and on. I have referred to it as a neat party trick. It is a neat party trick to be able to pull this out and be like, yeah, this is my handwriting, and see the surprise on people's faces. And
so do you carry around a quill and ink so you can have this on hand as a party trick?
So it depends a little bit. So the one that works the best for mobile is a marker. A marker is definitely the best way to do it. There are because it's just a shape, right? It's just a shape. And so I do have markers that are the right type of shape for doing calligraphy. That I don't take them with me everywhere I go, but if I'm going to a wedding, or very famously off Kai, I will have them on hand so that I can do a little bit of calligraphy on the fly. And there's different. I definitely do not carry dip pens like that because oh my god, that's messy.
Yeah, that would be a little bit impractical.
That would be very impractical. So if I bring my own paper, I will bring. So if I really want to show off, I'll bring my own paper in a little notebook, and I will bring a fountain calligraphy pen. I have a bunch of those. I've got like 10 pilot parallels, and they're the majority of my experience. And if not, I will bring a marker, because the markers will write on most paper moderately successfully. And so I did that for decades. Just as kind of like a little hobby to do periodically and to show off sometimes. And it was, again, I've tended to take a lot of notes. I'm a very writing heavy guy. And then I started VTubing, and I was, kind of casting around for what to focus my content on. I knew I enjoyed being on the camera. I knew I enjoyed talking to my audience. And every once in a while, I'd be like, I feel like doing some calligraphy practice, right? Not many people do this. So I would, pull out the pen and paper and do a little bit of calligraphy practice on screen. And people responded quite positively to it. And I actually do like looking at the numbers, and they consistently got the best views of pretty much everything I did. So I've just kind of leaned more and more into it, and now my calligraphy is definitely the best it's ever been. I have improved massively over even just the last year.
I can imagine
to where I was. Yeah, it's which is something I really enjoy. I am a big lover of improvement and self-improvements, and a phrase that I end up saying pretty frequently is, I love being bad at things, because that means I've got more room for improvement.
Very good mindset to have, and it's very natural that after a year of increased consistency, because not only is your calligraphy better than it's ever been, I am assuming it just sort of baseline that you have spent more hours doing calligraphy in the past year than any other time, even the previous peak.
Probably, yeah. That's quite realistic. That's quite realistic, because it was something that in the past was a sideshow to me doing research, to me doing 70 to 100 hours of research a week, and so that's going to make it a pretty small percentage of everything I'm doing, right? If I'm there's not a lot of hours left in a week at that point.
Now, it's interesting because the answer to how does calligraphy come into your life now presents several other questions, because you mentioned that this came about due to studying Japanese, and that it was an immersive course, and that you were watching movies and doing other things in addition to just learning the language. But that, again, this seems to be relatively separate to all of your professorial work. So,
yes,
as always, within whatever realms and limitations you are comfortable saying, how do you end up taking Japanese? What was the aim at the time? Because it probably wasn't sociology, at least not from the holistic sense there.
No, I started the Japanese before any sociology. I did it when I was quite young, and the reason why was because we were offered, I had to take electives, and I was told that the most difficult elective available was Japanese. And I am kind of confrontational.
Oh my gosh, he was like, oh, I take this as a challenge.
Yup.
It's not even, the classic answer of, well, I was a bit of a weeb and I was into anime and such. It was no. They said that it was tough, and I said, try me.
Yep, absolutely. I am a pretty stubborn person, and I am a person who I think kind of prefers to, not always, but I think often I prefer to lose a difficult challenge than win an easier challenge, or even an appropriate challenge. I very very anime rival coded of me right there.
I would say anime pro tag coded of you.
Also that too. Yeah, I tend to. It's not smart, right? It's not wise of me to behave in this way, but
I think there are certain decisions in life where that is, even if not quite quote unquote optimal, I think that is a strong and fun and for some folks proper choice. That, all right, are you going to take the confrontational, most difficult path of maximum resistance in everything you do? But it's an elective. It's an elective. Yeah. It's something that isn't necessarily going to become a large part of your life. Obviously it did, but of all the things to take that risk on, to allow yourself to go out on that limb, that feels like a not irresponsible one to do it.
I will say a lot of life is about failure tolerance. And you've gotten me on a philosophical mindset here.
Please, by all means.
A lot of life is about failure tolerance. And I was a sociology professor, but I've also taught at several other levels. And a thing that is in common between pretty much every level of education I've worked in is that if you have 90% or higher accuracy, you're a success. If you're at 70% accuracy, you're barely scraping by. And if you're at 50-50 accuracy, you're a failure. And we're in a gaming space here, right? This is a lot of gamers here. If you have a 50-50 success rate when playing any competitive game whatsoever, that is simply the intended outcome.
Yeah. If you have a 50% win rate in, master rank of any competitive game, and you're able to get 50% against the best in the world, you're semi-pro at minimum. If you have a 60 to 65% win rate, you're one of the best in the world.
I mean, if you have a 60 to 65% win rate consistently and you're playing a game a whole lot, for most games, that means that something wrong has happened with matchmaking. Like that means there's like a programming problem. Like that's not supposed to happen. The way that most matchmaking works is that you're supposed to ascend to a level where you get to 50-50. There are some exceptions here, and honestly, they mostly go the other direction, right? Like, if you have a 50-50 win rate in Apex Legends, like that's weird. Like that's not supposed to happen. There's supposed to be 20 teams in a free-for-all, and like
obviously the format there changes things because it's not a one-on-one, so the odds there.
Well, and to get away from gaming, right? Like the amount of failure tolerance and success tolerance you should have for something is going to be very context dependent.
Absolutely.
If I've done some work with employment and labor sociology, and most fields, about 200 people apply to each job. So an expected success rate, if you are applying to jobs that are of an appropriate skill level and pay rate for yourself, is under 1%.
Yep.
And so, like, if you are posting like a 5, 10, 15%, let alone 50% application success rate, you're applying to jobs that you're massively overqualified for.
Yeah.
And conversely, if you are an airplane pilot and you successfully land your plane 90% of the time,
you're lucky to be alive.
You're lucky to be alive, and you're a really bad pilot. You are either a really bad pilot or you are doing some very, very strange flights. But like, yeah, it is very expected that in, landing airplanes or performing most surgeries, that you're going to have a 99% success rate. That's very expected. If somebody somehow managed to get down to a 90% success rate on appendectomies, I would just be baffled as to how that was possible. People compete over how fast they can do appendectomies. They don't even worry about the safety. It's so intuitive to the surgeons I've talked to.
Mild aside, it's just incredible. Of appendectomies used to be one of the scariest, most life-threatening procedures you could possibly have. If you had an appendix issue, it was grim. And nowadays,
Yeah.
it is so incredibly mundane. It is, oh, yeah, sure, go to local ER or whatever. Someone there is going to be able to do this, one hand behind their back. You'll probably be on your feet again in 2 days.
Yeah. You will be in and out of surgery before you even notice the anesthesia. Like that's a remarkable change in our lifestyles. But yeah, this question of failure tolerance, right? This question of failure tolerance, and and of course, like, this also involves a question of, like, what is failure? What is success? It's a little bit easier when you've got a video game that you're looking at. But yeah, I'm doing calligraphy, right? That's my preferred art form. And what is a fail in calligraphy? What would that be? Is it a fail when I spell a word wrong? Is it a fail when my stroke looks just slightly a little bit funky? Is it a fail when I look at the entire completed piece and just go, "Oh my God, what a disaster"? Like, those are going to produce different numbers, right? Those are going to produce very different forms of analysis to be like, oh, and I'm a very self-critical person, right? Like, people who watch me do my calligraphy streams, I'll go, "Oh, that one's a little bit short," or I don't like that hairline. But like, I don't know how many of those I'd consider failures, because that's almost kind of beside the point. Right,
yeah, especially when it comes to visual art.
Yeah, especially when it comes to visual art. And it would definitely be a fail if I took on a commission and the person who commissioned me was so dissatisfied that they insisted on a refund. That would feel like a failure to me.
Yeah.
That would feel pretty clear to me.
A failure would be misspelling. A failure would be writing something to the point where it is completely illegible. But that takes a fair amount of failure qualifiers, shall we say, to reach that threshold.
Yep. And so we can get to a lot of these things, right? And it is an interesting thing to see how this way that we grade things on this ABC scale, from 50% is a failure to 70% is a C minus to 90% is an A minus, that this kind of infects your thinking in a lot of ways. And I guess kind of where I was going with this is that I am used to working with some very high success rate things. Again, I tend to feel like if I'm evaluating my calligraphy based on I got the letter form that I basically wanted written on the page, my success rate's incredibly high, right? I get like a truly wrong letter form like once every like 10 hours, where I'm just like, oh, I like really beefed that. And that's something I just kind of consider an acceptable cost of doing business. And then I also am, in quite a few of the video games I play, I tend to play at these levels that are way beyond what I'm supposed to be doing, way beyond my actual skill level. And so just constant failure, I am dying all the time in a lot of the games I play. Because I just like fire up an FPS and I'm just like, oh yeah, let's just set the difficulty to max and just see what happens. And what happens is I die a lot. And the midpoint between these would of course be the 50-50. And I'm apparently okay with like a 90% success rate. And I'm apparently pretty okay with a 99% fail rate. But give me a 50-50 success rate and I'm just mad all the time. I hate it.
And I feel like that is not an entirely unreasonable reaction, and as always, context does matter here. But
yeah, it does.
There's plenty of folks that don't enjoy high-level competitive things because you get to that 50% rate a lot, and that unless you have a particular mindset or interest in something, a 50-50 success rate just isn't fun. And that it's going to be something that people will, with pretty quick reaction, determine whether or not they have that personal tolerance for it. Is it something that they want to continue to go at, and will they continue to have fun at that 50% success rate? And that's where you get people who decide to go, whether it be pro in a game or to really commit and say, all right, I want to try and rank up to these high levels, or those who say, I'm willing to just play here in casual areas, or I might just drop the game entirely.
Yeah. And Yeah, this is the thing, right? Like we are in this very gaming heavy space, and uh, it is it's hard to avoid these metaphors and to avoid analyzing, psychoanalyzing our friends and colleagues on how they respond to and deal with games. And it's, again, we are also creating our own entertainment here. We are entertainers here, and how do we evaluate our own success as entertainers? What is our metrics for success? And there's a lot of ways to carve that up, and we are encouraged by the back end of what we're dealing with to view this very much through this, um I wouldn't even call it business lens. I would call it like a sort of, what would you even call it? I mean,
A
it's the
metrics
numbers.
lens, perhaps?
Yeah, it's like this very KPI way of looking at the world. And it's I think almost anybody who is invested in this space for any length of time will quickly comes to the conclusion that that's a way to just drive yourself insane.
For most, yes.
Like you don't like get better at what you're doing. This isn't useful feedback. It's just kind of an awkward form of self-harm.
If anything, I feel like numbers matter a lot more and are more practical to pay closer attention to as the numbers get bigger. That if you are just starting out and your numbers are below 20, even below 50, variance and fluctuation therein is going to be subject to a lot of different things and is going to be just proportionally impacted more. That if you have 20 viewers as your average and you have 2 less viewers, well, that's a 10% decrease. Whereas if you have 200 viewers and you have 2 less than your average, that's only 1% difference. So there's a lot of different ways that, like you said, you can slice that, and especially depending on what your personal goals are, whether or not you choose to engage and how you choose to engage can be healthy or not. If you want it to be your livelihood, if you want streaming and content creation to pay your bills, you're going to have to pay attention to some degree. You'll need to figure out where the line of health is for you, and that's going to be different from everybody. But for me, as someone who doesn't want to make streaming really any amount of their livelihood, I have the luxury to just not care and not pay attention. But with that comes the acceptance and decision of, all right, I will not be receiving financial compensation for the things that I do.
Yeah, it's Rusty Robot, you've got that right. Like, this is my own technique, my own process on this is I only check the numbers like once a month. Because the aggregates are much more valuable than the
single data
moment
points.
to moment. Yeah, the single data points are not super useful. There's a lot of good reasons why any given single data point might be highly misleading. And that's just one of those, and hey, this is actual sociology knowledge here, right? Like, this is like your data sets get much more valuable the much more robust they are. And honestly, even then they're not always super useful, because they only become scientifically useful if you're controlling a lot of the variables. You have to do a lot of control, and that's something you're generally not going to have a lot of control over, right? Like, we only get to do 1 day's worth of streaming. We max out at 24 hours total streaming for September 15th, 2025, right? Like that is the most streaming data we could ever possibly collect. And so we cannot compare what if you do 10 hours of painting miniatures versus 10 hours of Roblox versus 10 hours of ASMR stream. You can't do all of those scientifically together. The next time you get to do a stream is going to be a different day already. So we're really losing control very, very quickly. And a huge part is that also your audience is going to know about all of your previous streams. like you're because of the ways that streaming you kind of accumulate audience members who like you over time, uh, that that adds even more variability to it. We've got these long range, these cumulative, these depository or even sedimentary
Hmm.
effects, to add a lot of scientific metaphors to this
Plus the
that may not
variables
be
of
heard.
who else is streaming. Is
Hmm.
this other big popular streamer whose content might be similar to mine, or I might have a statistical overlap of viewers with? Are they
Hmm.
streaming now? Is it something that some of my streamers or some of my viewers are over there? Is it something that there's a big event going on? Is there a whole live debut happening? Is some
Hmm.
other streamer who's similar to me who just doesn't stream often at all, but every stream they do, if rare, is a big event? And just all those variables multiplied times the literal tens of thousands of streamers. And that's just if you are consolidating to twitch.tv alone. As you were mentioning
Yep.
and we were discussing before we went live, if you go into YouTube, it's just the outright Thunderdome. It's everything. It's not only streamers,
It's
it's
everything.
every single piece of video content that has been uploaded to one of the most comprehensive sites in the world over 25 years or something now. It's been a while. And then
It's been a minute. Yeah,
yeah.
it's
And then
that's a
every
good way
other
to put
option
it.
of entertainment. There's so many things. We live in an embarrassment of riches age where there's so much cool stuff to see, watch, do,
Yep.
and that's wonderful. But it means if you're trying to make your livelihood on having people tune in to you at a specific point in time, that's going to mean you are under constant and incalculable competition.
It's true. It's true. It's true. And it's I mentioned earlier that like an external factor that is beyond even like entertainment is there are points in people's lives where they get more busy. And there's a lot of chaos there, right? Like school has started up recently, and depending on who you are, that may or may not cause there to be more or fewer people watching you. And it's a lot of it does come down to like who else is live at a given moment. And this is actually a little bit of an aside, right? I am you said that I am the only calligraphy streamer that you know.
Yes.
I, despite being a calligraphy streamer for at this point, I'm having my second affiliate anniversary. Calligraphy was not a main part of my content when I first hit affiliate, so less than 2 years of me making it a major part of my content. I may have had one stream of calligraphy at that point. I am only aware of one other person who makes calligraphy a substantial part of their content on all of twitch.tv. If we go to Instagram and YouTube, I know quite a few more, but on Twitch, it is pretty much just me. And this has a particularly interesting small side effect in that the category that I've been, I tend to, I kind of rotate which category I use. Sometimes I list it as art, sometimes I list it as writing and reading, sometimes I list it as just chatting. But I have learned that the reading and writing category is a pretty small field.
Not surprising.
Not surprising. And so if I click on there, I can see, like, I can tell at a glance, it's like, oh, I'm going to dominate this category right now. When I change my category over to the reading and writing, I can like sometimes tell, like, but sometimes I look at it and it's like, why the hell are 5,000 people in this category that usually has like 500? What the hell's happening here? And I don't know what's happening there, to be honest. I genuinely don't. I do know sometimes people do it dishonestly, which is always a little bit of a frustration.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
I'm one of those folks where I do get annoyed if a face cam streamer who does not VTube at any point in their content and is not discussing VTubing or is not working on a VTuber model or anything related to it is camping out on the VTuber tag, and you know, it is what it is. I'm not gonna make a big stink about it, but I'll say that I'm sort of the curmudgeon who's saying, hey, come on, you know, at least be truthful in your tags.
It's an odd one to me. As a thought process, maybe I'm naive. Maybe it's a sign of me being too pure for this world or something like that. That it doesn't even occur to me as a thing to do. I want to use my tags and my categories and stream title and such to give people who are looking for something like me or that are chance upon me some sort of understanding of what they're going to get into, right? That like I want I don't see how it benefits me to start to have a stream rolling and then people like click on it and then feel like they've been deceived.
Yeah. And
That's yeah.
And I feel like the folks who use or rather misuse tags probably don't actually get a significant increase from it. I don't think that the folks who are base cam streamers and not doing any sort of VTuber related content, but using the VTuber tag, are getting a whole bunch of people clicking on their streams because of the VTuber tag. But because they are occupying the VTuber tag, if I search that tag and 5 of the first 10 results on the screen that I am now looking at, looking for someone on the VTuber tag, aren't VTubers, I'm just less likely to start scrolling down and use a different tag entirely. So it just devalues the tag and becomes clutter and sort of a obstacle to people who are trying to use it legitimately, while not actually fully benefiting the folks that are trying to exploit it to the extent that they would probably want it to actually benefit them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it does not make it, it seems more.
It feels like a pure net negative.
Yeah, it feels pretty negative sum. Yeah, it feels not like a theft so much as a kind of burning things down kind of behavior. It's maybe even vandalism might be the proper way to think about that. But I might be being melodramatic.
Who knows? Yeah.
So. yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. Good.
I was going to say, sort of wrapping back though, that was a very interesting conversation and something that I anticipate I will have to do multiple times tonight because we had to do it during the pre-interview. Is diagnosing, okay, how did we get to this point and wind it back? And the way we got to that was because we were discussing how you got into calligraphy itself and that you had started taking Japanese out of obstinance, perhaps would be the term, when you were told that it was a particularly difficult elective. So you start taking Japanese and you are exposed to all the different cultural things. And I'm curious, did other elements of Japanese culture beyond calligraphy and beyond the desire to learn language inspired by spite or otherwise end up appealing to you? Or was it more of just a neutral thing that came part and parcel with the language?
I feel like I need you to rephrase the question. I apologize. Hold on. Yeah, I kind of lost track on that one.
You're good. That was a bit long-winded of me. So you started taking Japanese because it was a challenge, and you got into calligraphy. But you mentioned there were other elements as well. There was the film and culture. When you were first taking Japanese, did you have interest in those other elements, or was it just sort of something that was obligatory with the language course?
When I started, I did not have a lot of strong feelings about Japan one way or the other, or anything in particular about Japanese culture. I did have a somewhat negative opinion of some of the students that I was entering with, because I felt like they came across as fetishizing.
Oh, joy.
And
to be clear, I fully believe that, and I fully agree that such a reaction is not inappropriate.
I found them cringe. You know, the classic response there. I thought it was in a very literal sense of me kind of like, yeah, like actually cringe. I'm like, ugh, as I have developed an affection for not every single thing about Japanese culture, and I don't think that should surprise anybody, that there are some things that just don't resonate with people because it's very large, and any culture is going to be too large, I think, for anybody to consume all of it. I do and this was not one of those things I knew when I started. I already did like a lot of minimalist aesthetics.
Mm.
And it is kind of an interesting thing because as influenced by Japanese aesthetics as VTubing is, it's so self-consciously hyper Japanese. It tends towards pretty maximalist aesthetics, and I prefer simpler aesthetics, right? I prefer I prefer a nice big comfy sweater, for example, with very few accessories. I'm not a big accessories guy. I try to keep my room. My room is fairly cluttered, but it's not a lot of actual decoration. Decoration is just that between calligraphy and miniatures painting and cooking, I have so many tools. I have so many tools. And so that's kind of where that's the thing that I've learned to appreciate. There's certain other traditional arts in it I really like sumie, and kintsugi. I really like. I've definitely found Japanese directors and movies that I really and not so much music. I'm not really a music guy, but I found some Japanese art that I've really, really enjoyed. Drive My Car is one of my favorite films. I love Tom Popo, and I will inflict that on people all the
You've
damn
been taken
time.
by the void.
Oh,
We're back. We're back.
I'm back.
Yeah.
I'm back.
Model blipped for a brief moment. Still had you here on audio though.
That happens. Hold on a second. Okay, whatever. I don't even have my I've got it minimized, so I can't even see. But yeah, I love, Drive My Car is a beloved film to me, and Tom Polpo is a film that I inflict on people very merrily all the damn time. There are definitely Japanese food items that I really enjoy. Not every single piece of Japanese cuisine I really enjoy, because I tend to like pretty spicy food, and that's not a common feature of Japanese cuisine. That's not a frequent feature there, but I've really enjoyed most miso-centric dishes that I've engaged with. So it's but yeah, I did not start off from a very like Japanese a phenol position. It's a thing that I've grown to enjoy more as I've studied Japanese. I have always liked Japanese grammar. I do like the grammar system in Japanese. I think it's neat.
Yeah, I've not taken any Japanese classes, but there was a couple months a few years back where I taught myself the katakana and the hiragana. Didn't ever actually get bold enough to descend into kanji, but it is a very structured and logical language system, even if it has a large number of characters. On the other end of the spectrum, we have English with its very neat and concise 26 characters and its completely and totally illogical use of every other language rule and structure.
Oh yeah, no, Japanese is a very mechanical language. It has a very mechanical and clean grammatical system that is, I wouldn't say easy to learn, but it is easy to apply. Whereas English is absolute chaos.
English is the shambling amalgamation of a dozen other languages, and it's entirely logical to how it got to where it is. But when through, thorough, though, thou, thought, and though are all a letter away with wildly different pronunciations, and let's not even get into the words that have multiple pronunciations for the exact same writing, with no way to parse it unless you understand and have learned the full way to get context from everything else around it. English is the hardest language in the world to learn, in my opinion, and I don't think it's a good thing. I think it's just a very sloppy language.
The way I've tended to think of it is that English has a lot of capacity for expression in particularly in word choice. English speakers tend to have extremely high vocabularies, and this leads to all sorts of oddities that are interesting, that are quite interesting. one of the ones that I liked that's like really stuck with me over the years is what's with the deal? Why is cow meat referred to as beef?
I'm sure there is some
There's a
historical reason. I don't know what it is.
Okay, so cow is an Anglo-Saxon root, and beef is a French root. And that is to say that actually working with the animals is lower class, and consuming the animals and consuming the products of those animals is upper class.
That makes sense.
You know, it goes to that Norman occupation. And this does not really accomplish very much, right? Like if you speak almost any other language, they don't have this distinction. And English like has been trending a little bit away from that in some places. Like, you know, we don't really say that you eat a poultry sandwich.
Correct. Poultry has become something between a academic and an industrial term.
Yeah. It's kind of a little bit more specialized. And if whether you're raising it, you're keeping it as a pet, or you're eating it, it is chicken. And this is, but most languages that's everything, right? Like it's you know, Japanese is buta and butaniku. There's not pork as there's not a totally separate pork word. It's butaniku, you know, for pigs, for pig meat. And so the way that I remember seeing it was that for similar levels of education, a pretty educated American will have a vocabulary of about 30,000 words, and a more or less similarly educated Japanese person will have a vocabulary in like the 6,000 to 8,000 range. And that's a pretty big difference.
Yeah.
That's pretty substantial in terms of the number of words. And so
what's the number of characters known? English speakers cap out at 26.
My Japanese, I'd say I'm like mid-level. I'm at like 2,000 something.
2,000 characters.
Yeah.
And that is just baffling to me. That is nigh unthinkable of, at that point, I guess each character in and of itself is almost a word, but then you have the different combinations of characters, and I guess it just ends up coming down to you need to remember a lot of characters that are essentially a word and just not likely to be combined.
Well, a lot of times there's combinations that are not particularly confusing, and a lot of the individual characters cover things that you might think would be covered by multiple characters, by like character combinations. Like a huge percentage of the characters that are in use in the main vocabulary are like different types of trees. Like peach tree, pear tree, cedar tree, willow tree. Those are all each one character.
And so do those get combined with other characters with any frequency?
Yep. Yeah. And this is one of those things that if this is what my understanding of historical linguistics, we are getting into some stuff that is not actually my strong suit at all, is that this is pretty typical for how languages develop and progress over time, is that the things that are closer to the base and center of the language are simple descriptors of the world, of the external world. And so this is actually a kind of cool thing about, have you heard of Proto-Indo-European?
No, but I can take the roots of that word and infer what it is.
Mm-hmm. We're like really off on the tangent here. So the Proto-Indo-European is the conjectured language that is the root language for the entire Indo-European family, which is the group of languages that goes from Irish Gaelic to classical Latin to Sanskrit to, I think Iranian is going to be included in there, not including Hebrew, not including Turkish, not including Mongolian, etc., not including Finnish. Finnish is interestingly not related at all, or Basque.
Probably not including Japanese.
Oh yeah, no, Japanese is on a completely different family. Yeah. So there's this Indo-European family that covers like most of the languages of Western Asia and India and Europe
Yeah.
are covered by Indo-European, and there's one language that is thought to be is constructed and conjectured to be the root language that all of those other languages share as a common ancestor. And we place together what that root is based on mostly natural language, mostly like natural items in the world. And one of the parts about this is quite cool is that because of which when we can find words for like trees in particular, for trees and different types of plants that are very similar between, Sanskrit and Spanish, that tells us that's much more likely to be an older Proto-Indo-European root, whereas if they have very different ones, then that tells us that's a more local term, a more recent term. And so we've been able to conjecture, and this is considered pretty accepted and non-controversial, that Proto-Indo-European is from like the Ukraine. Based on which plants are the ones that are like deeply embedded in basically every language.
Oh, that makes sense, especially if it's going to be something geography based like plants, wildlife of that nature, and just what are the most common ones in that place, and therefore going to be the most common characters, words, phrases from which things are built. And that reverse engineering makes a lot of sense.
Yup. And reeling us back a few steps. I've got 2,000 something kanji in my kanji bank that I'm practicing from, that I've completed, not just like ones in front of me, but behind me. And there's a general lack of abstract terms. Like I've not seen a kanji for, say, Kafka-esque, or detective, right? Things like that. But it's a lot of very specific terms, like like dragonfly, or silkworm, or there are some more abstract ones like collision, to defend, that kind of thing will be individual characters. But in order to get to those more abstract concepts, it does tend to be combinations of less abstract characters kind of get combined, which shouldn't be really too disturbing to us here in English, where concepts, I'm trying to remember these ones. My linguistics and my etymology are not always the strongest. Things relating to using our hands and our eyes will be elevated into becoming abstract concepts over time.
Yeah.
The we don't start with like those. I'm trying to remember anything off the top of my head. Manual, right? Like manual, as in like you did something on purpose by yourself. Comes from hand. Manual labor. Hand. Yeah, manual labor with your hands. But we use that to say like we manually coded something. Tayamichi would know all about that. And so that's something that is, I don't know. I have. This was all on the subject of like, what did I enjoy about Japanese before I started studying it? And again, the answer was I didn't know a lot before I got into it. I knew a little bit about Japan and Japanese culture before I started taking courses, but I mostly just wanted to prove something. I was a young man, and I wanted a challenge.
Well, a challenge you found, and then you also found what would end up becoming one of your primary art forms and niche pieces of content along the way. So the unexpected little benefits there.
Yeah, it's a, and this is a thing that I've generally found to be true in life. Old man philosophizing here. That I have found that my actual attempts to plan things out and to do things in a purposeful, deliberate way have not tended to pan out super well. And certainly to do like big, complicated plans have never really gone my way. But being patient and being open-minded have both paid off pretty well for me. That I have tended to do pretty well by remembering small things that I have learned or people that I met periodically or skills that I developed as part of developing another skill have turned out to go quite well for me. It's been interesting to me that in the moment I didn't think very heavily about them, right? I did not think very heavily about calligraphy when I was first learning it. And I could get into some of the less interesting work I've done, but some of the stuff that I learned just kind of offhandedly as a part and parcel of a bigger project turned out to be things that got me to hold down jobs for years on end. So it's
It's funny because the things you're describing here are resonating with me almost uncomfortably so, because I have a number of parallels in my own ways that I never actually took Japanese. My high school, the only options were English, it was Spanish, French, and Latin. And I took a couple years of Spanish because it seemed the most practical. Figured I was getting bits and pieces of Latin just from normal English class. French, I didn't see much practical use in the types of things I was interested in. And at the very least, just statistically speaking, the number of people who speak Spanish in America is higher than the other two options there. I was a solid B student in that, and I didn't enjoy it. It was one of my worst subjects, and I sort of accepted after the required number of years that I was sort of done with it, and I retained bits and pieces of it. And when I had the option to pick up Japanese in college, lo and behold, it was a 6-credit course, which at least for where I went, that was the maximum number of credits that any single course could be. That there were other languages you could take as a 2-credit course, but like you were saying, for when you were posed with the option, it is considered a very difficult one to get into, and probably, at least partially, due to its sheer divergence from English. Spanish is at least a Romance language, and I think French is a Romance language as well. Latin is French at least, even if not a spoken language regularly, has enough operative roots and presence in everyday English that it's something that you go into with a baseline of possibly recognizing some words or being able to infer certain things. You get none of that with Japanese, so it's understandable why you get cognates.
Yeah, there's very, very few.
And I never ended up taking Japanese, but through random circumstance, I wound up realizing that based on pre-existing interests and preferences, I was very interested in things that just happened to be overlapping with, I don't even want to say necessarily Japanese traditional culture, but Japanese contemporary culture in just random ways. For Japanese food, I always loved Japanese food, but that's because I love seafood. I've always loved seafood. And plain and simple, island nation, going to have very good seafood. It's going to become a very core part of their cuisine. When it came to, I really enjoy anime, it wasn't necessarily because of the action or the art style. It was the story structures. I like shows that have beginnings, middles, and ends. I like something with a contiguous story where I'm able to follow along and reach a conclusion at some point. I don't really enjoy the North American serialized show that is easy to pick up. You can tune into any episode of Simpsons or some USA Network crime drama, and it'll be episodic, and that's great and fun, but you'll get 2 minutes of long-form plot at the beginning and end of each episode, and maybe a season finale, but that it's just going to be episodic, whereas a lot of anime, you'd have to go back historically to really diagnose the full extent of it, but most of those shows are going to be linear and contain to usually 12 or 24 episodes, 1 or 2 seasons, and that's the story, and that's just how I like to consume my stories. So lo and behold, I fall into anime, not necessarily because I like I said, the art style or Japanese in particular. it just so happens that's how I already preferred my stories to be told. Combine that and a couple other things, and I'm just sitting here being like, well, I guess I like Japanese stuff, but each of them have their own separate and entirely unrelated interests and inspirations. It's sort of amusing to me just how illogical it wound up being for that overlap, because it's not, oh, I like this one thing from Japanese and I like this one thing from French culture. It just sort of lined up.
It's well, and this is kind of funny to me, like coming from a very books, or I'm a more books guy than I am like a TV shows guy, and I was kind of surprised to hear you talking about how the Japanese stuff felt more long form and deliberate and less episodic, because
more short form and deliberate.
More short form because like when I think of like what I read that's Western, I read a book that is a self-contained story that has a beginning, middle, and end. And then when I read Japanese stuff, it's very frequently manga that just kind of keeps on going until they run out of money, or the writer and the editor have a fight, or in one memorable case, the lead writer goes to prison. And and that one I actually very particularly remember. That was Act Age. The writer for it went to prison, and so it just ends. Like there is no like added final chapter. It just
stops. It is suspended, and that is where it is. And what's funny is, while you are entirely, I suppose the phrasing here would be that your opinion is entirely valid because of the specific circumstance of what made it to the West. Because what made it to the West earliest and became the most formative were those long-form shonens. Statistically speaking, long-form run-on shonens, the ones that many people, not just you, but that I would say the statistical majority of people in North America think of when they think of anime, is not representative of the actual proportion of anime that is produced out of Japan. That the number of shows that go for more than 2 cours or so, 2 seasons, is probably less than 10%. But that's what made it over to the West, because it's something that they wanted to be able to have for a long time. They didn't want, okay, we get to air this for 2 seasons and then need to just hope we find another one. The obvious and very glaring exception to this rule being Cowboy Bebop, which famously ran for basically a decade on 26 episodes, but that otherwise, when they were licensing what was, especially back in the late 90s, early 2000s, a riskier license, something that wasn't as proven in the West, they wanted to invest in something that they knew, all right, if this hits, we will have this cash cow for a decade.
This is, See, I was thinking in a different direction here, which is because I'm reading, fan translated mangas, and my thought was that this has to do with the preferences of the type of person who makes a fan translation in the first place. That there's a selection
that's
bias
also understandable there. A similar selection bias, and that makes sense. Obviously, manga has different statistics around it of what is going to be something that is shorter versus longer, because at least in manga, you are correct. Usually they're going to be designed to not necessarily be infinite run-ons, but they are not necessarily going to be shorter stories. That most original anime is written to be shorter. And since something that we discussed earlier in the week, I enjoy my media with music. Music is a very big thing for me.
Yep.
And having that in motion and with sound is something that appeals to me. So I end up going toward that. And that's why anime structure worked for me there. That you, as someone who enjoys reading a lot, that
Yep.
We end up having similar desires in our story structures, but it is different in terms of the presentation format. And that you are right, Western literature, even at length, is usually going to be a trilogy of books, not necessarily 20 volumes, which, at least for manga and light novels, are going to be longer in Japanese. And I never actually thought of how you sort of get that inverse in those two forms of media until just now.
Yeah. I think that it's nothing intrinsic. It's just extrinsic elements of like how the selection bias happens.
Yeah.
And it's this is actual fun sociology here. Is you have to think about your selection and sampling bias, right? You have to think very carefully about your selection and sampling bias, and when you ask yourself what is a representative sample, you are ending up asking a philosophical question about, well, what are you trying to represent?
Mm-hmm.
It's lots of things are seem like they are unrepresentative samples, and they're only unrepresentative samples because you wanted something else to be represented. And a lot of things that are notionally unrepresentative samples can still be very valuable, right? They can still be very, very valuable. If you are doing a survey and every single person that you ask a question of is under the age of 25, that's not representative of the US or the world at large. But if you are trying to look at American people under the age of 25, it's kind of definitionally a strength of your methodology that you didn't pick up a lot of 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds.
Did you take any formal statistics courses?
Yeah. I'm not very good at it. I'm going to be blunt with you, man. It was quantitative. It is genuinely kind of funny to me that statistics has always kind of felt like a struggle for me. But I honestly really enjoyed calculus.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Because I'm the opposite. I was great at algebra. I hated calculus with a fiery passion. And when I took statistics, I was in love.
Oh, interesting. I don't know what it is about statistics. It just all falls out of my head. Like, I can do some like crude statistics. And like, I am one of those VTubers who I have a spreadsheet that has like a few 100,000 entries in it of statistics from my streams of various types. I like being in the numbers, but I am just doing like means and medians and data slicing. I am not doing any like actual. I can't remember like why the hell I would even like do a W test, let alone how to do it. I
think as we were saying, especially for the types of numbers that you're looking at there, they aren't going to be subject or practical to more traditional statistical analyses. A lot of more structured statistical analyses, like those types of tests, standard deviations and such, are going to be things that are relating to either something that is scientifically stable, or at the very least something that is trying to analyze a operative phrase here, statistically significant population, and that statistical significance is an actual statistical term and concept that can be quantified and reached, not just a philosophical question of, oh, are you statistically significant? But there is that philosophical question of, can you apply statistical significance to every type of statistics? And that is no. You couldn't apply statistical significance with true reliability to streaming stats. Unless you were trying to track at the scale where it is perhaps the entire stat population of Twitch.tv, but that for a individual streamer, it wouldn't be able to be applied.
Solino's already doing that.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure somebody is.
Yeah, a couple people are doing that kind of stuff. I mean, certainly Twitch is. And it's yeah, there's a lot of that stuff where it's just like, yeah, just getting some like medians and some means and stuff is like pretty much as I can really expect. Uh, and so I am so it's yeah, I would say statistics was, like I said, I just like always struggle to like remember what I'm doing with it and where I'm going with it. Calculus was this very strange one where for me it was an almost transcendental experience of learning how to turn infinity into finite quantities. It's very potent to have that capability. And again, I functionally never need to use calculus since I got through my schooling. I've basically never used it. Not never, but almost never used it. And I like legitimately can't remember the last time I actually had to take an integral.
I was going to say
And
that people use calculus in the sense of what is the population under the curve when you are counting
yeah,
totals for different things. But when people in practical everyday situations use calculus to quantify what is the number total aggregate under the curve, they don't do it with integrals or with derivatives or I'm forgetting the exact terms there, but they don't use AP calculus to do it.
well, the big one is that I cannot remember for the life of me the rules on how to integrate trigonometric equations. It's like completely gone. I'm sure if I needed to, I could figure it out again relatively quickly. And there was a bunch of really neat algebra tricks to learn how to do that. But like, good gravy, I do not remember it. It is gone. That stuff is gone. But I did really enjoy it. And it's really made the world feel a lot more what's the word I'm looking for here? Handleable, comprehensible. It made the whole world feel a lot more coherent and comprehensible.
No, for me, it was the opposite. I just looked at it and said, I see conceptually some possible applications, like I said, the everyday tracking under the curve, but not at this scale and sense. I understood conceptually what it was trying to do, and for whatever reason, as someone who had been just excelling in math classes consistently until then, like I said, algebra and I got along great, and calc was the one where I just hit that brick wall, and I don't know. I'm so happy for the people that get along with it better than I did.
I'm constantly mad about the way that we teach math, right? I've been a teacher for a long time. I've taught math. And I am consistently mad about how we teach math as a society. That one of like the way that we teach math is not how can we teach math. It is how can we use math as a way to distinguish between the good kids and the bad kids. It is about using math as a filtering device and not teaching people how to actually use it. And so this is why math tests are formatted in the way that they are, where they are designed to try to figure out how many math equations can you do as quickly as possible in this time frame, which is really frustrating because that's not, I know some mathematicians, they don't consider that useful for being good at math. Being good at math is a matter of having an aesthetic sensibility about how logic operators operate with each other.
Yeah. I want to make sure you're done because I have my own hot takes and opinions about math and teaching math.
I mean, I've kind of hit the main one, which is just, if we wanted to teach people how to do math, if the goal was to get people to have enough of a mathematical background that we can get all of the engineers and physicists and medical diagnosticians and insurance actuaries that we want for our society. If that was the goal, was to have the least amount of friction for the most efficient allocation of labor for math demanding skill sets, we would not teach math the way that we do at all.
I
It's
agree.
highly irrational.
And I think not only would we not teach it the way we do, I don't think we would teach the types of math that we do. I think that this problem is compounded in multiple ways. I fully agree with your statement that it is currently used and applied as a filter for the good students and the bad students, quote unquote. I don't think it was designed with that intent. I think it became that way due to how it was taught and due to which parts were taught. And this is further compounded by the rapid increase in calculator and mechanical power. Because back in the day, I know that you are a fair bit older than me and that I've said I am in my 30s, which makes me a little bit older than the average in the VTubing sphere, but that I, and goodness knows you, were told growing up, no, you will not have a calculator with you at all times. You need to know this in your head. And, well, that is patently false now. And it happened quite quickly. So...
Well, and I'm gonna make a bit of a disagreement on this one, which is I have to manually check my math all the time. And being able to do crude arithmetic is not that useful, but it is useful for making sure that you did the right damn things with your algebra equations. And so far, I'm still writing a lot of manual algebra equations. I'm still doing that pretty frequently.
Well,
I was doing that before we got on stream because I've been doing VBridger work.
And the thing is,
which requires,
like I said, it's sort of a multi-part thing because I think that for all of the things and the types of math that are most difficult and least common in everyday life that we were told we will never have a calculator for, we do have a calculator for now. But on the inverse, I think that to a certain extent, the way we teach math right now is good and practical, and that it hits a very abrupt inflection point at approximately 6th grade. I think it is good and important that students are taught to know their times tables. I think it is important for every adult to be able to glance at 4 times 4 and know that's 16. I think that all of that is something you should not need a calculator for, even if you have it in your pocket. I think it is important to be able to evaluate and check that mentally to an extent. But I think that once you start getting into any form of calculus, essentially, once you're getting into trigonometry, once you're getting into even more complex multivariable math, that the number of instances where you're going to use that in your everyday life is not very high unless you are in very specific fields. I am one of the folks, and I don't think it's a hot take to say, I think that we should make I think we should make calculus an elective, not a natural occurring class in most high school math tracks. And I think that in most high school naturally occurring math tracks, we need to have finance. We need to have basics of accounting, not even necessarily bookkeeping accounting, but all right, what is loan and interest and what is it? Making sure how to keep track of numbers that you're going to use in your everyday life. And if you do have interest in calculus, if you do see that as something you want to study deeper, I think it should remain available. I think it should be something that you are potentially able to interact with prior to higher education. But at least when I was in school, and I know most other folks in the US of my relative age, if you were in the highest level math, you were inevitably going to be railroaded into at least one calculus course. And I think that if you are of advanced math in high school, it's more practical statistically for adults to spend that slot on a high school track for something more practical.
I am not sure. So here's my kind of thinking on this. Again, as a this is the professor of mine, might be a little bit obvious here. Uh, it's basically it's turned out to be very difficult to predict what qualifies as practical skills going forward into the future.
That is very fair.
An example that's really interesting from the last 5 years is that the worst degree to get for career purposes has been computer engineering.
Oh, the irony
English has been
compared
one
to
of the
15
best.
years ago.
Yeah. English has been one of the best. Uh, English majors and history majors are pretty consistently out earning computer science majors in the last couple of graduating classes. And this is due to a number of factors, the biggest one being just sheer unpredictability of what future job markets look like, but probably more but there's also like a very simple like question of regression to the mean, right? This is the most trivial way to predict things in the future. One of the most trivial ways to predict things that are happening in the future is, in what way are we currently diverging from the standard? Okay, just predict the opposite will happen. Regression to the mean. Generally, most things kind of return to the average over time. Most things are not just compounding divergent things that just go on and on and on infinitely into the future in a spiral out, unbounded and no return to what things were like before. That's much more unusual. So that's a very simple and crude way to try to predict the future, and that might explain it, right? That might be enough to explain why computer science degrees have been really taking it badly for the last couple of years, is that they were so over marketed that they were very, very over marketed, and people took computer science degrees based off of hype rather than actual interest, and are both, one, flooding the market, and two, not actually all that good at it. That's like my biggest piece of college advice for people thinking about a major is choose something you really like, not something that you think is going to be good in the future, because and certainly don't choose based on what you are good at. Discipline and talent do not actually make up for a lack of enthusiasm. Once you actually get into high level stuff, once you get into 300 plus level coursework, the people who are enthusiastic will clobber you, even if you are both more disciplined and more talented than them. If they care and you don't, you will lose.
Yes.
It's the way that I talk about it is, think about an engine. Enthusiasm is your fuel. You can make a more efficient engine. You can make a more powerful engine. You can have a car that starts further up off of the starting line. But eventually, you just are going to need fuel. Eventually, you're going to run out of fuel, and I saw that happen all the time to students getting into the 300 level courses.
Yep.
Just
concept of burnout is not unique to VTubers. It is not unique to content creators. It applies across the board for any discipline, for any vocation. If you are not enjoying it, you are exponentially, I don't care, you don't need to find the exact statistics of how likely are you to hit burnout. If you're not genuinely enjoying it, the likelihood of you hitting burnout is just astronomically high, and if you're having fun, the odds of you hitting burnout are going to be not necessarily astronomically low, but significantly lower.
Yeah, it's going to be a big one. It's going to be a big difference, and you definitely want to be doing things that you care about, that you love, and I'm going to keep on hammering this point home because I've spent significant chunks of my life doing stuff that I didn't really love, and it didn't turn out great for me, to be honest. It's not a good way to live your life, to be doing stuff that you are trying to avoid, right? dreadful. Yeah.
Spending time doing something that you don't enjoy is sometimes a necessary reality.
Oh no, there's absolutely going to be stuff
of course,
you gotta do.
but
Yeah.
that in terms of if you have the ability to choose your path, if you are looking at majors or disciplines or fields of study, to find something that you enjoy. And wrapping back a little bit to the issue of computer science degrees, I think the problem that was suffered there is, again, multifold, because I fully agree. Yes, they were hyped up. They were the big thing. They were the hyped up one that this is where you can make a lot of money. And to be fair, at that point in time, it was incredibly, patently true. There was so much money, and that if you knew how to code, even 20 years ago, beyond the average, it was something that could become a very, very fruitful career, or at least a lucrative one, shall we say.
Yeah.
The problem is compounded in that, one, like you said, it became the big hype name brand thing, overly so, and that you had essentially a flooded market. I think perhaps the more impactful part of it is, again, similar to what I was mentioning with math classes, where technology grew and changed at such a rapid pace that only the folks that were hyper passionate were able to adapt with it. Because if you took a computer science course and you learned BASIC, or if you learned Java and such, there's so many different computing and coding languages that are either now used significantly less than they were, or just outright extinct. And if you committed enough time and memory to knowing that language, but did not enjoy the broader concepts of coding, if it is something that you didn't want to learn and figure out, oh, there's this new language out there, or there's this update or this new platform that uses this other language that is different, and got into that, you're going to get left behind with a degree that says you're a computer scientist, but with no knowledge of anything that is used in computer science today in the matter of potentially a decade.
Yep. That's a dreadful place to put yourself into. It's a dreadful place to put yourself into. I am going to take advantage of one of the rules that you gave me. I need to use the bathroom.
Please, by all means. I'd be offended if you didn't.
I will be right back.
Alrighty. Well, for folks who are here right now, first off, Lesbian Cat, and using the, I don't know if I qualify that as leet writing or not, but very well done. Lesbian Cat, welcome on in, and thank you so much for the follow. And welcome on in to folks who have been stopping by, whether you've been here from the beginning in the pre-show, or if you floated in somewhere along the way. I do see you in chat, Sharkray, Archibald. Hello, Lesbian Cat. Nikumi, Rune, Melkor, Rusty Robot, and I do see you, Hawkins Force, over on YouTube. I don't have the YouTube chat up here. It is one of the rules of Twitch that I haven't figured out how to do quite yet, in terms of having multiple separated text boxes, and I don't want to accidentally trip over that one. So I did make sure to pop into the chat over on YouTube and at least let Hawkins know that I did see them. So thank you if you are over there, because I am indeed now multi-streaming on YouTube and Twitch. I believe this is the third show I've done it, and it's nice. I haven't hit the point of really noticing much of a difference yet, but hey, it's out there, and it also means that the VODs are automatically up. I don't need to worry about downloading and then trimming and then uploading. I might trim a little bit here and there, but if anything, I'm kind of wishing I did this earlier, just because it does create that very convenient permanent VOD, since the ones here on Twitch will expire after a week, since I never took affiliate. Just one of the things I decided for the show, as was mentioned earlier in the stream, of me not wanting this to be something for a job or income, but just my fun. And I do see some signs of life over there. Almantas, are you back?
All right, I'm back.
There we are. Hello, welcome back.
Hello. But yes. Where were we?
Where were we? We were talking about the many ups and downs of schooling, education, the overabundance of computer science degrees, and the need for passion in whatever you do. And it's interesting because this applies to a lot of different things, not just computer science, because I majored in marketing and business. And it was really fascinating for me to see the sheer difference in how marketing concepts had to be taught and like logistics and management had to be taught, because business schools are one of the few places where you have both hard and soft skill majors. In a lot of different schools, you know, if it is the School of Engineering, the School of Medicine, the School of Education, that you usually have every discipline there is either a hard or soft skill for the most part. But you have accounting, which is all very specific. There's rules, there's laws around how you do accounting. There is a right and a wrong way to do it. Marketing has not only so many different concepts that it might as well almost be sociology or philosophy unto itself, but then there's the artistic part, and then there's the part of different markets for marketing. The types of things you're going to do if you're advertising shampoo is going to be different if you're advertising trading cards, and so on and so forth. So I realized, oh, my classes can't teach me anything specific because they literally couldn't do that. It would be a waste of all the students' time, or about all but one student's time, if they tried to get hyper-specific on any given thing. So they have to be vague. Whereas anything in, if it's math, certain computer sciences, calculus, things of that nature, they can and are able to get hyper-specific because these are the rules, and anything else outside of that is going to be, based on current knowledge, patently wrong.
True. Yeah. I do have to confess, marketing is a consistent weak point of mine. I do wonder if I should have ever taken some marketing coursework, even though I don't think any of the schools I went to even had marketing courses. I was on the academic track from the get-go, from the jump. It was all bent like a bow towards me going into academia.
I'll say, I think everyone should take one marketing course and not more, because I don't think that the vast majority of marketing courses that I took beyond the basics were anywhere near incrementally valuable. Knowing the basics is very useful and will get you very far, and everything else past that is going to be industry, company, sometimes down to specific, product specific. And you just need to be able to learn the context of whatever it is you are trying to market and know that space to be a good marketer. And having the basics of marketing will let you do that much, much easier and much more effectively. But getting into some of the hyper-specific things was when it started to be the ones that were more prone to falling out of use just due to either technological changes or broader market changes.
Will you spend half the time watching episodes of The Office? Oh no. Oh.
Didn't have that as my education, and having not actually seen The Office, now I'm very curious. Do you feel that The Office actually did create good parallels and learning points for marketing?
Could you repeat that?
Now I'm sort of curious for Archibald in the chat of if they think that The Office did have any actual value. They say perhaps not the worst possible. That's something. Were there any classes for you, Almantas? Obviously not marketing, but ones that you felt were particularly useful, and ones that you think more people should take, or ones that you just felt, this was not necessary, this didn't end up being worth the time?
So here, the comedy for me, the comedy answer for me is that the coursework that I wound up getting no utility out of and had no practical use for at all, and that if I had never touched it, it would have barely had an effect on my life. Or would have had a minor effect on my life, but would have barely been perceptible, was chemistry. I have an entire chemistry degree that I have not used for anything since I graduated. Not strictly speaking, nothing. Like occasionally talk to somebody who have been like, oh, I think the water in my town is really bad, and then I can look up the water chart and I can be like, you're being ridiculous. And the but other than like some trivia with chemistry, it's a wholly useless degree. Uh, Classes that turned out to be surprisingly useful. One of the ones that turned out to be really surprisingly useful, was really stuck with me, was a course on Chinese poetry.
Oh,
That one turned out to, and this is something I've been saying a couple of times here and there. One of those things that's like that just absolutely is wonderful about this world, the world of online, of computer, is that we can just read all sorts of old works all the time, and in particular for this case, you can just read DOVA, right? You can just find poems by DOVA. I'm pretty sure that ctext.org has them up, and if not, Wikimedia has them on Wikisource, has some DOVA. And DOVA is this Tang Dynasty era poet. He's from the 600s and 700s, and he was writing during the Anlushan Rebellion, and so there is something truly comforting and incredible about being able to find greater than 1,000-year-old poems that are like twice the age of the English language, about what it is like to live through your government just being made of stupid idiots. Like, that's
the idea of any creative works, or really any works, it doesn't matter if it's creative, physical, or otherwise, lasting that long. And like you said, sort of actually taking a moment to comprehend the actual functional age of the English language and say it goes beyond that is such a baffling thought.
Yeah, it rocks. It's great. It's great. I mean, the Epic of Gilgamesh, I think, is literally older than any living language.
And that's impressive in its own right. Not only the survival, but the fact that it has been continuously adapted so that it can be preserved and still read. It's not just, oh, we have this extremely old tome in a language that almost nobody actually reads or speaks or otherwise, but we have it. It's been preserved, and that alone is an impressive feat. But we have this. We've made sure to translate it into speakable languages continuously over that span of time, such that someone today can still just read it and presumably preserve a statistical significance, of the intended writing.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you. I do have to point out that in the case of the Epic of Gilgamesh, it's in Sumerian, and Sumerian was a fully lost language for centuries. We know the Epic of Gilgamesh because of exactly what you said, actually, that like nobody could read it for centuries, and we found tablets of it, clay-fired tablets of it, and we had to spend it was a really titanic effort to relearn Sumerian.
Oh, okay, so I'm wrong. It wasn't continuously updated. It was reverse engineered.
It was, we had to relearn Sumerian. We do not know how it was pronounced. We have guesses at how it was pronounced, but those are guesses. But we know what they mean. We are pretty confident that we understand the most of the meaning of Sumerian. And here's the thing about the Epic of Gilgamesh that absolutely rules. Do you know what the plot of the Epic of Gilgamesh is?
I will admit that I do not.
Okay, the plot of the Epic of Gilgamesh, this rocks. I love telling people this one. The plot of the Epic of Gilgamesh is that Gilgamesh is the most powerful man of civilization. And he is so powerful and strong and cool and everything that his presence is he has no chill. He is, through his power and through his lack of chill, oppressing the people of his city. And the gods are trying to come up with a plan to make it so that he stops being such an oppressive force against the people of Uruk. And their solution is to find the most powerful man of the wilderness, the most powerful man that is not of civilization, and get the two of them to start having sex with each other. That's the first part of the plot. And the second part of the plot is Enkidu, Gilgamesh's boyfriend, and they're very explicit about this. They repeatedly say, "Loved him as if he were your wife." It shows up like 4 times. It's a repeated phrase throughout. Is the sentiment of "loved as if he were your wife," and the is it Enkidu gets sick and dies, and the last part of it is just Gilgamesh losing his mind and going around being sad about his boyfriend being dead.
Aww.
It's yaoi.
Oh gosh, you're not wrong, but to describe it in that term seems nigh heretical. You're not wrong though.
It's just more evidence that the most important people for the preservation of fictional works are the Fujoshi.
I believe that. Yeah, I absolutely believe that.
Yeah, like it's they're so strong. And
that there has been the appetite for Fujoshi literature across the ages.
Absolutely. It's so transcendental that we can recognize it when the language died for thousands of years, right?
And that of all the things to be preserved, like you said, and to then pique someone's interest enough to decide to reverse engineer this whole language.
Yeah.
Fascinating and hysterical. And you mentioned that you yourself, you mentioned, well, a couple of interesting things. Already mentioned that you prefer reading, that books are sort of your primary form of media. You also mentioned to me that you've gotten viewers from Goodreads. As a quick aside, I'm curious, do you know which specific books or reviews on Goodreads led to it, or was it just from Goodreads holistically?
I'm not sure. I can probably make a guess based on the timelines. It wouldn't be any of the particularly recent ones because nobody recently has told me where they found me. That nobody's like actually specifically said like, oh, I got to you through X, Y, or Z thing. It would probably have been, nope, that one's too recent. I'm a pretty harsh reviewer, geez. Probably it could have been any of the a bunch of the manga reviews that I've done on there, which would be kind of funny because I've got some 1-stars on here. I'm being mean. This one, Summer, would be believable. Any of the Anna Cavins would have been believable. I would be very surprised if it was for my Graeber reviews, but that's not impossible. Those might actually be the ones that make the most sense because I'm pretty Graeber is a person who I oddly have quite a bit in common with, even though I've got a lot of disagreements with Graeber. At least I think most of the people who like my politics and thoughts tend to also like David Graeber, but it's
you'd mentioned also one of the books that you were reading a while back that you really enjoyed. The Era of Poetry. Which dynasty was that from?
Oh, that was Tang Dynasty. That was Dufu. Right. Dufu is not actually my favorite poet. My favorite poet is Li Bai, who was his mentor. Or a friend, I should say. Li Bai, I love Li Bai. Li Bai is incredible. Absolutely incredible. Everybody.
As someone who does not know either Lubu or was it Li Bai?
Li Bai, Li Bai.
As one who does not know either, what are the differences in their poetry?
Oh yeah, this is they're very, very different. Dufu is much more connected to the world. He's much more talking about the world as he exists in it. And I'm sorry, I'm making sure I said the right words. Dufu is doing that. Li Bai is a very transcendental poet. He's very much a transcendental poet. The poem that I really like by Levi that's like really burned into my brain is, we sit together, the mountain and I, until only the mountain remains.
Mm.
Levi's poems are primarily about the beauty of the moon and the ephemerality of human life to Levi's, because again, he's writing very transcendental poetry. There's a certain melancholy to his poems, whereas Dufu's are often actually grieving and sorrowful. But a thing that has always stood out to me as a very funny part of the story about them is that they met once. They met once. They were contemporaries, and they met once. And Du Fu wrote 2 different poems about how awe-inspiring and incredible and amazing it was to meet Li Bai. Li Bai never mentions it.
Now, I thought you said Levi was Dufu's mentor.
Friend was the more appropriate word, and that's even a stretch. I don't. He was mentor. I shouldn't have said mentor. That was just a totally inappropriate phrasing there. Inspiration is the much more appropriate.
Okay.
Dufu was a bit younger and was really impressed with Levi and really into Levi's work. I think if I want to be really mean, I guess I could say simp.
But that's so interesting, though, that for being such, if nothing else, a fan of Levi's work, that Dufu's works were so drastically different. So if there was inspiration, are there, I suppose, structural or linguistic similarities, even if the subject matter is divergent?
Well, there is even overlap in the subject matter. It's, like I said, I was emphasizing the differences because that's where we started off on. But they're both Taoists. They're both writing in formats that are popular during the Tang Dynasty. So you won't see like ancient song formats so much, or more recent long form formats from them. We're seeing like 4 and 8 letter classics coming out of them, and it's so there's definitely formal elements. There's a certain amount of subject matter to it, but again, they're thinking about it differently. They're approaching it differently. Dufu just is not nearly as impressed with getting drunk and looking at the moon as Li Bai is. Like Li Bai is like endlessly impressed and enchanted with like getting drunk and looking at the moon. It's like he loves it. It's very revelatory. And the like I said, Dufu is much more of the world. Is much more of the world than Li Bai is. Might do that Friday. Sounds like a blast. I mean, hell yeah. Hell yeah. It's
that's so fascinating that even just for that one poet's taste, that they can have such awe and inspiration, and yet apart from the, I don't know if medium would be necessarily the right term, but perhaps format of their poetry, that he did not seem to take any inspiration on the subject matter as one might expect it for somebody who has that type of fanaticism towards an artist.
Yeah, it's and it's worth pointing out, like Dufu is not like gone down in history as a like pale imitator or a weakling. Like Dufu is considered an extremely strong poet in his own right.
Yeah, and the fact that the name is known today is monumental. Just the sheer persistence of awareness that is that's so statistically significant, to use the term again. It's
a cool thing, to be honest. I think it's very cool that we even have this kind of knowledge about the past, and we have access to it going forward. And it's one of those things that is slightly awe-inspiring to me, right? Is that I can't keep up with my reading list, and my reading list is already very carefully pared down from the possible realm of reading list that I could have, right? I could have a massively deeper reading list than I do, and I am still struggling so much to get through it, right? I am still that reminds me, I need to go to my book reviews and write down that I finished a book today. So let me get that
like we were saying, embarrassment of riches ages for media and art and entertainment, because you could be, instead of reading any number of books, watching streams, or instead of watching any streams at all, be reading books or watching anime and all these different ones. And everybody has their list of things that they know they need to see or read or listen to. And every time that you cross one thing off your list, 5 things or more have been added.
It's true. And this is kind of remind me, like, part of the reason why I've actually in some ways become a little bit even more book oriented as a result of VTubing. This is one of my, like, kind of hot takes in the VTubing sphere, is that it's not super duper specific to reading books, but reading books are very useful for VTubers, because the thing is, like, you need to take a goddamn break for VTubers. Like the VTubers tend to stream basically as hard and as hot as they can without subjecting themselves to burnout. That is pretty typical behavior, is that they just stream the maximum amount that their brains can handle.
What is your threshold?
My threshold, I noticed that.
Oh, sorry, I meant then more in the
okay,
broader sense. But I suppose at the same time, yes, the question, what is your threshold?
Yeah. Mine's, I usually have been saying that if I stream for more than about 20 hours per week, I start to get kind of dull. I start to lose some of my edge. I think that number has gone up a little bit over time. And I think part of it is because of becoming more of a reader. And I was always a heavy reader. My book reviews file is like a few 100,000 words, and a lot of my book reviews are like one line. So I have an entire set of like 5 books in a row where I didn't write any review. I just wrote down the name of the book and the day I finished. I can go. Those books I actually like. Those are not like a bad list of books. Drop the Goodreads. Yeah, sure.
You might need to, Automat will probably bonk a link if it's a full URL. So either chop off or separate the .com or something, or send it to me and I can post it in chat.
I was about to say, I'm just gonna send it to you. That's easier. But yeah, yeah, there we go. That tagged me.
Because it has your Twitch username as part of the URL.
Yeah, I was surprised. That it was that sensitive. And so here's the thing about books, right? Here's the thing about streaming. Here's the thing about streaming is that when you are streaming is an all sense using. It uses all of your senses. It is perhaps the least edited and least, what's the word I'm looking for here? Bounded art form that you've got going. Like, you don't have a goal. You don't have, like, there's not like a plot line to your streams. People talk about it and try to do it, but that's not normal. That's not typically how it's done. You typically just stream to try to create a vibe, and you try to keep that vibe going as long as possible. And books are about as far away from streaming as an art experience as you can get. They are the most unstream-like thing. You are using one sense. It is very the reader has a lot of power over time relative to the artist, whereas the streamer has incredible power. Live streams the audience has very little power over time, over the use and abuse of time. So that's a big part of it, and they have definite ends. That's like such a huge part of why I find that books are very good at very, very good at regenerating your mind after streaming. I find that they're just so different from what you are doing on stream that it really makes a huge difference. I strongly recommend that if you are streaming a lot and you are finding that your you're kind of like getting a headache and getting a little bit burnt out, and you're trying to figure out ways to recuperate and regenerate yourself a little bit better, pick up some books. Log out and pick up a book. And the thing is, like, I think it's less important that it be a book in specific than that it be bounded things, right? Like movies and television shows are also pretty good for this. Comics that have an actual definite endpoint is a good move, but things that are unlike streaming is a very good idea. Get some non-streaming things in there to flush your system out.
Switch up the type of media you consume. Switch up the format of media you consume. I very much agree, whether it's books or if it's movies or if it's just games. Something to switch the way that your brain is working even a little bit. Just in general, variety is the spice of life, I think, holds true on this. But like you said, sometimes just you need to flush out your system. You need that palate cleanser to sometimes, whether it be get you out of a funk of some sort or just to help refresh and make watching streams be fresh again, plain and simple.
Yep.
I notice my own media consumption habits, for lack of a better term, fluctuating, not necessarily day to day, hour to hour, but certainly over weeks and months. That last month I was watching a ton of anime. I was really just getting into a lot of different shows this season. But then the past couple weeks, I've been starting to skew a bit more towards games with a little bit of streams, and that I assume in another couple weeks or two, I'll probably switch back to anime. But it's part of that ebb and flow and switching things up and keeping things fresh, and what each person is going to enjoy and shift to when they need to refresh is going to vary. But I think it's pretty important to just sort of have in the back of your mind, if you detect that you are not enjoying something that you are watching or reading, whatever the format may be, consider just swapping over to something else for a little bit, see if that hits better.
Oh, it makes a huge difference. Makes a huge goddamn difference. I cannot tell you enough that it's
and looking through some of your Goodreads right now, your variety is very fun. And you had told me about some of your different tastes earlier.
Yeah.
You had mentioned not only do you enjoy older Chinese poetry, but academic nonfiction. In particular, you had mentioned Inked, which was from a different dynasty.
Inked
this
is
was
great.
the Song Dynasty, and it was historical nonfiction about soldiers. So this is quite far from even both of the poets, that it's not drunk looking at the moon reading. It's not even necessarily the social parts of reading. I suppose there might be some social things baked into a soldier's life there, but this one is still relatively different, and at the very least of a different dynasty and therefore different era itself.
Haven't finished it. I actually really like the Song Dynasty. As a dynasty to study, I've developed a real fascination with them. And Inked is an incredible book, and it's actually very illustrative about what history is like as a subject, because I talk to people who are even very enthusiastic about history, and their perception of the history discipline is often very strange. I shouldn't even say strange. That might be condescending. Is often very divergent with what I have gotten used to as a person who, despite not really being an academic historian by training, does read academic histories on purpose because I want to know these things. I want to learn. And so Inked is a book, just to fill in the audience here, is a book about soldiers in the Song Dynasty, and is called Inked because if you were recruited to be a soldier by the Song military, they would tattoo your face. And the purpose of this, right, is to make it harder for you to desert.
Yeah, because if you run away, that someone will be able to see relatively clearly if you show up in town. that person is supposed to be a soldier. They shouldn't be here. They should be at a base or a camp or some sort.
Yep, it would be a camp, yeah. And where this hits in a very interesting way is almost things that may not be particularly well known is that in traditional Chinese religion, your body is an inheritance from your ancestors. And so any body modification is an insult to your ancestors and spiritually polluting. And so this means that by joining the military, just by the act of joining the military, you have already been permanently marred and spiritually defiled by the state. And so that puts a fairly nasty ceiling on your ability to ascend through the world, and also a fairly nasty what's the word I'm looking for here? Drop in social prestige, maybe, is the fancy way to put it. It puts a fairly it makes you a worse person in the eyes of the whole society that you're a part of, just to be a soldier at a basic level. And so it's also worth noting that the other part of this that the book is really about is that there's another group of people who get tattooed, and that is prisoners. It is a traditional punishment in China, dating back to the Zhou dynasty at least, to tattoo people, because again, it's spiritually defiling. It's an insult. And so prisoners and soldiers have a lot of overlap, and a major source of military manpower for the Song dynasty is pressing prisoners into, or even sentencing prisoners to serve in the military. And this is a very strange military by our standards, because the Song dynasty military is a professional standing army, right? Like ours, like the U.S. military. The U.S. military is a professional standing army. It is not is not an army that is raised as needed in response to crises. It's an army that exists at all times. And so the Song dynasty one is a professional standing army where people are serving for like 40 years. Is like a standard no amount of time to stay in the Song military. So this means that you can't just like take all of those people out of the economy. The Song dynasty military is like building dams, and plows, and doing iron casting and making clothes. It's a full economy. It's a full like productive way of it's almost like state slavery that also serves a military function. Which all of this is kind of leading up to the question of, how did the Mongols defeat the Chinese during the Mongol conquest of China? This is not a small part of it. This is like a non-trivial component of it, is that the Song dynasty military, many units of it just flipped over to the Mongols.
Yeah, they unsurprisingly, certainly, you look at this concept on paper and can see the fatal flaw quite clearly of, well, if they did not volunteer for this, that means that they are not likely to be particularly loyal. If you went out of your way to mar them and spiritually defile them, insult their ancestors, by virtue of them enlisting, even if it was voluntary, is not likely to inspire greater confidence, and then you have whatever proportion was forced into it. And, well, if they are a criminal who was forced into this, logical progression here is going to be they don't like you. They're probably not happy. And especially if, again, on top of all this, it is now not just the standing army part, but then this whole other state-facilitated labor and full-on machine in that sense, you can say, well, yeah, of course that happened.
Yeah. It's so yeah, it's been a very fun read, and I'm going through it slowly. I tend to take my time these days. It's not like back in graduate school where I had to read like 500 plus pages a day just to keep up. I get to take my time and read like Yeah, that was pretty normal.
That's wild to me. Like a week,
I
even
worked
I could
very hard in
totally, I could
graduate school.
totally get 500 a week.
No,
That's
no,
still a fair
no.
amount, but a day, that's
Yeah,
just
no, yeah, like 10 books a week was like, yeah. It's actually really funny, like because of the pace I was reading at, and because I was like reading not for general comprehension, but to like achieve specific objectives relating to like my curriculum or my thesis. Uh, I I have retained so little of it. There are like entire
how
books
did
that I
they
read in graduate school I
confirm or
barely remember.
evaluate if you'd read all this? Because I can't
I
imagine
don't
that
think they did. I
there
don't think they
wasn't
did.
enough time to, I would assume, have you write full papers. That maybe
No,
there would be a worksheet
no,
of these are the base points of the plot.
no,
But
no, no. The purpose was not that. No, 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 no. Because remember, this is graduate school, right? They're not trying to figure out have you passed like a test. They're not trying to get you.
true,
They're not trying
yeah.
to keep you disciplined on tasks. They are trying to get you to. There are two components of it where they are functionally testing you on this. One component is that that you participate in class discussions, right? Like you meet with your professor and you meet with your fellow students, and being able to talk intelligently about the readings. The other part of it is your ability to incorporate them into your research, and that was the actual key part, was doing just enough to. That was really what it was about, was getting research. That was my actual goal. Was I was burning through books like crazy in order to find specific pieces of evidence that either strengthened or complicated my arguments so that I could write better papers. I was writing with very much a goal towards that type of research. I was writing with that in mind. This is very much a use case. It is worth saying that I was a very reading heavy student. I did all of the optional readings, all of them, including some real lengthy guys. And I tended to have half a dozen to a dozen footnotes per page.
Wow.
I like to cite my sources.
That's incredible. So were you just super adept at speed reading? Were you skimming and catching on certain points? Did you have a system to ingest this much this quick?
Well, like I said up top, actually, although this actually ties all the way back into the very start of this, I took a lot of notes. I took a lot of notes. I was not joking around when I was saying that I was taking I was filling entire notebooks on a weekly basis. And I was working, I was reading like 70 to 100 hours a week.
And were these books usually literature, academic,
No,
historical?
academic. These are academic works.
Okay.
They were not easy reads as a rule. These were not generally. There were not too many books that I read that were like true like nightmares. There were a couple of books that I read that were like real sloggish nightmares, and there's at least one book from that time that I can remember reading and not understanding at all, and not bothering to go back and try to figure out what the hell the authors were talking about. Nation and Nationalism, by Butler and Spivak, which is an inauspicious combination. Butler is like the worst writer on the planet, and Spivak is not that much better.
I'm smiling and nodding and pretending that I know any of that.
You asked earlier if there were any types of courses that I recommend people take, and I recommend that more people take gender and women's studies courses.
That makes sense.
Flat out. I think a lot of men pass on gender and women's studies courses because of extremely silly bigotry and irrationality on their part, and that is stupid. You are really shortchanging yourself. There's a lot of truly interesting and useful things to learn in a gender studies course. The unfortunate truth, though, is that the most important scholar in the field of gender studies is a person named Judith Butler, and Judith Butler is like the most obnoxious, painful writer on the planet. Just sentences that are a page long and only barely circle the point they're trying to make. It's reading Gender Trouble is an incredible book because it is actually very accurate and very insightful and meaningful and incredible. It's also it is like chewing glass in terms of enjoyability. It's very frustrating that there is actually an author out there who is incorrect and important and you can't ignore, and also sucks so goddamn much at writing. Usually that doesn't happen, but Butler is that author. But yes. Most of the books that I read in graduate school were not particularly difficult, and there's an extent of skimming that would happen because, again, I had my own research areas of interest, and so I would read a book, and it would be a pretty typical academic book will have like an introductory chapter, and then a like 5 or 6 like body chapters. And usually I could tell which of those body chapters was the important one. If I was really in a rush, I would just skip to the body chapter in question. Don't overuse this hack too much, kids. If you are assigned a book in a court at this kind of speed, you can fairly frequently get away with just reading or focusing on the introduction.
Logic
because the
stands there.
introduction.
Because the introduction is going to be, to some extent, a summary of what is to come. That's just sort of the function of an introduction.
Yep. This is the thing that, because particularly for nonfiction, for fiction books, the function of an introduction is to hook the reader. Set the stage. Whereas the function of an academic introduction is, here is what this book is about. Here is what I cover in each major chapter. Here is why it is important, right? It'll be, and it's. And also, I mean, the corollary to that, right, is that if you know that you're planning on reading a book all the way through anyway, you can usually skip the introduction.
Yeah, that makes sense. If you are going to actually get all the parts, but you need to spend the time doing that. I envision the way that I would approach this volume of reading, if I had to do that, is the way I would mentally compartmentalize is... You were saying you were at its core looking for things that were related to your thesis or your broader studies. So I'd be thinking, all right, these are the terms I'm looking for, that I'm skimming through this. I'm trying to catch on words. I want to see something that is either a term, a name, something that I know is related to my research or writing. And as I skim, if I trip on a word, stop, I'm now reading this paragraph. And I am doing that. I'm taking notes on that. And once I've completed that, keep skimming and just try to... That's how I would sort of optimize my reading to find that. But then similarly, like you said, if, this is a very crude example perhaps, but if there's a movie that I know I'm going to see, I don't watch a trailer of it. If there's a movie that, if it's from a director or it's in a series that I know I love, I'm going to take the time to watch this movie. I not only avoid the trailer because I think modern trailers have too many spoilers, frankly, but, well, if I'm going to see it, why would I go and spend even that 2 minutes of time seeing some of the selections of the best scenes out of context when I could have a more holistic experience seeing those scenes in context for the first time by just watching the whole movie?
I'm a full trailers avoider. I'm a total trailers avoider. You're not going to get me to read.
I will only watch a trailer if I need to be convinced to watch the film.
Honestly, I usually still don't even want to do that because usually it doesn't even approach what I'm looking for. From the trailers, and trailers are all over the place. They're so chaotic. What I tend to rely on for watching movies, making me a real what's the word I'm looking for here? I think the phrase people might use is criminal. Is that my preferred method of like choosing what movies I'm going to watch is if people are still talking about the movie years after it left theaters.
Yeah, that's a pretty good heuristic.
Yeah. I tend to try to trust specific people. Um, and like I've got specific friends whose taste that I know, and if they are recommending something strongly, that's usually a very good sign.
Oh yeah, that's a big thing
Uh,
for any media in general. If you find a friend that, all right, they have recommended 3 shows, 3 movies, 3 books, 3 bands, and all of them have been dead on. I love these things. You're going to put significantly more weight on the word of that friend than of insert other random friend here.
yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, some of my closest friends in life have very different tastes from me, and they recommend to me consistently stuff that I hate.
Everybody has
It's
that in
very
their friend
funny.
group too, though. There's always that friend that's like, we get along, we're best buddies. Boy, do we not like the same movies.
Yeah, yeah, and it's yeah. I've got the friend who's like favorite games are Path of Exile, Final Fantasy 14. He wants to play games where there are lots of big numbers and lots of looting to do, and I'm just like, I don't care at all, man. This is all of this stuff annoys me. I want to play games that are that like are thought provoking, that demand that I think about them very heavily. That's that I'm making really meaningful decisions in. I don't really want to be doing lots of execution. And it's really fun to like have these comparisons, but it's also sometimes kind of frustrating to like talk to somebody and they're just like, no, you got to check out this thing, and you're just like, I don't like the thing that you are looking for. If you've got the friend whose standard for a dessert is the most chocolatey dessert on the planet, and you are just not into chocolate, then like dreadful experience.
Yeah.
Dreadful experience.
It's interesting. This is making me think, because you mentioned that some of your favorite games, one, you described yourself as, and this is me using your words, not mine, quote, obnoxious hipster.
Yep, that's fair. That's very fair.
And you mentioned deep puzzle games in particular as one type.
Mhm.
And there is a series that I love that comes to mind that I could see somebody in the blind recommending to you to the point of excess, to the point where you probably might roll your eyes and be like, yes, people have told me this 10 times. And that based on what I know of you so far, I think there is a 20% chance that you do love this series. And I think there's an 80% chance that if you've played it, you don't care for it at all. Has the Professor Layton series ever been recommended to you?
It has. I haven't played any of them. I have not gotten around to them. Those ones, they've been recommended to me. I think they kind of came out when I wasn't really playing very many games, and they're console games, right?
No, they were actually DS games. They were handheld.
Well, okay, I wasn't even thinking of that I would draw a distinction between a DS and a console.
Or they were not PC games.
They're non-PC. Yeah. I have been. I'm very much a PC guy. I'm very. So I've never owned a DS. I don't think I've touched a DS.
Oh, I actually think DS was a fantastic system. Had a great library. And Professor Layton in particular, obviously, thematically sort of fits you, which is part of why I think people would be prone to recommending it on top of any interest in puzzle games, because they are puzzle games. But, and I say this as someone who adores the Professor Layton series, they announced a new one, the first in a decade, like a year ago. It's going to be coming out in the coming months, and I am so freaking excited. They are not deep puzzle games. They are not puzzle games where decisions matter. They are visual novels with great stories, beautiful art and music, and fascinating, fun, colorful characters that are strung together with a series of mostly detached puzzles. And that the puzzles are very creative, unique, and separate, but if you are someone who doesn't enjoy a bite-sized puzzle, and a lot of them, even if they are very good bite-sized puzzles and very different, diverse ones, you probably won't enjoy the game. And when you say deep puzzle games, my mind goes to something like Blueprints, which is
Mhm.
much more cohesive, comprehensive, grand puzzle of smaller parts, and that is just not
Mhm.
the case of Layton.
I so my favorite types of puzzle games. Deep is probably not the right word so much as really intimidating. My favorite series is Zachtronics.
I'll admit I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, Zachtronics games are
How do you spell that?
they are Zachtronics.
Okay, Zachtronics is not a series, it is a developer.
Yep. That is correct. That's correct. I may have been a little bit imprecise on my language there, but they're very identifiable as a genre. And I could try to explain them in any sort of a number of complicated ways, but at the end of the day, what they are is assembly code puzzles.
Mm.
They are assembly code puzzles, and I don't actually have much of a programmer background, but I do enjoy math and I do enjoy optimizing. And if you've ever played Factorio,
Familiar with it, haven't played it.
okay. Factorio is also very much a type of like a bit of a programmer puzzle. And it is one thing to solve the puzzle. The question is not solving the puzzle at all. It is solving the puzzle very efficiently. And there's multiple different types of efficiency that you might prioritize. Opus Magnum is the only one that I'm any good at in the series. I've been trying to play some Shunjin IO and I'm completely baffled by it. Shunjin IO is like, that one's really tough for me. But in Opus Magnum, you can optimize for speed. You can optimize for the amount of space your puzzle takes up. You can optimize for the number of parallel components to use the least number of parallel components. You can optimize to use the least number of unique commands. It's pretty fascinating, and again, it's a game where it's not about can you do it at all. There's not a single solution. There's many thousands of solutions. It's about trying to figure out the best one. Yeah, Shunjin IO, you're literally just writing like jump, sleep, modulo kind of stuff. For some reason, I find Shunjin IO way harder than Exapunks, which Exapunks is also you're just literally writing assembly code. I don't know why. I don't quite know why.
I'm looking up some of these games as you're describing them and explaining them, and it's very interesting because Magnum Opus is indeed classified as a puzzle game. It's also listed as a simulation game, which makes sense given what you said. Factorio is not listed as a puzzle game. It's listed as a RTS and action game, actually. But
there is an action element to it, which is pretty funny. That is pretty funny. But it makes sense. It makes sense to me.
And looking at this could not be farther from Layton. Everything you were telling me about what it is mechanically and conceptually that you like about these games tells me that you probably wouldn't like Layton. Obviously, liking these different types of puzzles are not mutually exclusive, but it's a very different type of puzzle game for sure. And that almost makes me curious from the academic standpoint of would you like it?
People have recommended to me the thing that has stopped me is, again, I don't own a DS. I'm not even sure I would be able to identify a DS if I saw one. I just really skipped over me. Just really skipped over me. I had a Game Boy non-color. Like as my handheld console. And then my next handheld console was I didn't have one because I haven't installed any games on my phone. And the as an aside, I found it very funny that I did talk to somebody somewhat recently who did not know that there was a Game Boy before the Game Boy Color, and they thought I was just stupid. that I
Wow.
was like, they thought that I was just like a moron. Like, no, there was color on that. I was like, no, there definitely wasn't. There was definitely not. There was,
Buddy, you might want
it
to
was,
check that.
yeah, it was definitely black on a green background. There was really
Yep.
nothing else on it.
That's why it was called the
And
Game Boy Color, because it was an iteration with color of the original Game Boy.
yeah, yep. But yeah, uh, the types of puzzle games I don't tend to like are the ones that follow on like classic like Sierra adventure type games where there's a very specific solution that you are hunting for. I have been curious about Blueprints and I haven't tried it out.
I haven't
And
either.
it's not
I think I do want to, though.
and it is worth saying that I'm not this is not like this is not obviously the only type of way of approaching puzzles and solving things that I have enjoyed. I, like so many of us, absolutely love Outer Wilds.
It is sitting in my library on that list of things I know I need to play but have not yet played. I've been told by countless people that I need to keep pushing it higher on my list.
Well, here's another one saying that Outer Wilds is a it's a hard to oversell experience.
A non-insignificant number of people whose tastes and opinions I greatly respect have called it anything from a top 5 game to their outright favorite game of all time. And
yep, that makes it very sensible, very coherent.
Sort of note to self, I do need to get off my ass and play it.
It's not a very long game. It's not this is not a Witcher 3 style commitment. It's
not Yakuza. That's one of the other series that was pushed to me for a very long time, and I started playing, and I did enjoy it. It was very good. Oh my gosh, those games are long.
They are long, it is kind of funny to me that I'm willing to play 3,000 hours of Warframe, but if you tell me like this RPG is going to be longer than 20 hours, I just tap out immediately. Yeah. I'm just like, nope, I don't need this. I don't need this in my life.
Or if I see, they say that it's going to be 30, 40 hours for this game, or even 10 hours or 20, 30, however long Outer Wilds is, it's on the list. I will get to it. I know I should get to it. Meanwhile, I stare over at multi-hundred hours in Balatro.
Yeah. Well, it's a very different experience, right? Like Balatro, you pick it up and you fire it up, and you don't lose anything if you put down Balatro at any point. You're not like there's not a minimum commitment on Balatro, and so that makes that each individual commitment to Balatro, to a run of Hades, to burning out a couple of rounds of survival in Warframe, to doing a level in Payday, like those are very minimal commitments, right? It's not like playing, the worst one for me is Final Fantasy 14, where I feel like I still haven't even really started the game, and I've got like over 100 hours in it. I feel like I'm still just like doing baby. I don't currently have it installed. I haven't played it in months, but even if I were to fire it up, it's like, oh, I'm still like in the tutorial. Is like what it feels like.
And again, I've had so many people tell me, just singing the praises of FF14 and that it's one of the best stories, and I lump it up there with One Piece. I know I'm missing out on it, but I'd rather play and watch and experience many different things than this one massive long thing that is almost Mount Everest.
Yeah. Yes.
I really do need to play Outer Wilds. Just
Outer Wilds is some shit. Outer Wilds is,
and I have avoided spoilers for the most part. I'm actually very good at avoiding spoilers, and anyways, like you were saying, it is much easier to pick up things like Balatro and Hades, and the way that I describe those types of games, roguelikes and similar ones, to people is you're not going to go throughout your day thinking about Balatro. You're not going to be thinking of, I want to try and get this perfect hand, or I'm going to try and get this type of build. It's something that as soon as you're done with it, as soon as you have logged out, closed out the game, that, you're moving on to the next part of your day, and that's fine. But what is so devious is that you're sitting at your computer, I've got a little bit of time. I've got a time for a hand of Balatro, that's fine. You blink and 3 hours have passed.
Mm-mm. Meanwhile, with like Opus Magnum and Space Chem, I have actually been like doing other work. Like I've been like at like a normal white collar job or in class or something, and just pulled out a sheet of paper and like drawn diagrams for solutions that I'm trying to think about.
Oh wow.
Like
that's fascinating because that's just the opposite.
Yeah. No, and I tend to prioritize this, right? I tend to view this as like a real positive attribute of a game if I end up spending a lot of time thinking about the game when I'm not playing it. My most extreme example, the most extreme example for me of a game that I have thought about way more than I have played is Undertale.
Ooh, okay, and that makes sense. I feel like most people who are deep into either Undertale or Deltarune have probably spent more time thinking about it or watching others play it or listening to the soundtrack than actually playing it. And that's not to say they haven't played it, but that those games are also relatively short, which is to say some 10, 20 hours. Yeah.
I beat Undertale in like one sitting, like 6 hours. Undertale's quite a bit shorter than Deltarune. I still need to do the last chapter of Deltarune. Let's just say the fourth chapter of Deltarune. I still haven't done it. I need to deal with that.
Such an incredible and fascinating thing, the rise of Undertale and Deltarune as a whole.
Oh yeah.
And just how unlike anything else it really is, and that in just sort of an astounding way unto itself, despite its runaway success, it hasn't really spun off its own subgenre in the way that a lot of runaway successes usually do.
Well, there's been some. I've not been following super hard. I can think of some games that are kind of Undertale follow-ons, like Off, for example.
Yeah. And Omori is sort of in the same vein. And certainly that isn't to say that there aren't any, but you look at things like, Rogue, that it spawned an entire subgenre of roguelikes, and then you see something like Balatro come along and that it spawns its own sort of sub-genre. You see that in media, that as soon as really Iron Man in 2008 finally solved the problem that studios had been hacking away at for 2.5 decades, there you go. We have the entire glut of Marvel and DC and other comic book movies. Even in anime, you have the isekai boom. And, isekai had certainly been done prior to Sword Art Online and others, but when you have a runaway hit like Sword Art or other ones of that era, that it then spawns things. Madoka Magica, you have the entire
oh my goodness,
sort of grim, dark, magical girl subgenre that spawned off of that one. And
Good Lord, that one.
For all of those, the number of spin-off iterations or inspirations from Deltarune and Undertale is relatively small. That those are almost gems unto themselves because they are so rare.
A thing that I think happens a little bit, there's a bit of an explanatory factor here, is that games, when we see games, when we see how people evaluate games that they really want to, like, it's like, oh, we need to follow up on this. It seems pretty frequent that what they're looking for is games that eat up a lot of people's time. That, like, PlayerUnknown's Battleground spawned an enormous number of imitators, including an imitator that has gone on to absolutely eclipse it
In Fortnite,
importance. In Fortnite.
Yeah.
And
Battle Royale
Balatro
genre.
Yeah, the Battle Royale genre. And Balatro is a small indie game that I think made good money, but didn't make, say, like Apex Legends money. But it
Certainly
does
not.
eat an enormous amount of time. And I will say, this is something that's unintuitive to me from a business perspective. This is counterintuitive to me.
I was about to say Balatro and Fortnite and PUBG's models just economically could not be more different.
Yeah, they could not be more different. And if you are releasing a game that has a single release that people pay for once, your actual kind of ideal player is the player who buys it and never never plays it or plays it very little and then never stops talking about it. And you, particularly if you're doing like a game that requires like patching and online support, you actually don't really want people to be playing that much because those are expenses.
Yeah. And PUBG and Fortnite are free to install, free to play, and that their monetization is entirely through battle packs and cosmetics and whatnot, and that you want people to be playing it consistently because you want them to be consuming the content and therefore be statistically more likely to make those cosmetic purchases and investments.
You are, particularly in the case of Fortnite, where Fortnite is functionally got a casino attached to it. The reason why they want you playing so much Fortnite is because that is exposure surface to the gamble.
Yeah.
You know, that is, each time you are exposed to the casino, you are running the risk that you will feel the urge, you will lose control and need to touch the stove, need to touch the slot machine, and that's how they're doing it.
Whereas Balatro, it's entirely you buy it once and it's entirely suboptimal for the developer, the publisher, to have you play nothing else that, you know, at least in the capitalistic sense, so to speak.
Yeah. For Balatro, they at least have the virtue of they don't actually need to be patching it or maintaining online servers.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about, say, for example, Age of Empires. They don't really like from a business perspective, it's kind of bad for people to spend more time playing Age of Empires because you bought the game once for $20. Yeah, and then there's a server cost. Like you get a one-time income, and then you have an infinite recurring cost. And so that's something that's kind of interesting. I do think that's probably why that's one of the reasons, not the only one, why we're pretty much never going to see any like true mega investments in super good like online multiplayer experiences that you just buy and there's no battle pass or anything else.
I am very much, having gone to business school and having understandings of games, that it's something that I am to certain extents a corporate sympathizer, for lack of a better term, in that, don't get me wrong, there are many, many unethical things that are done in many, many businesses, but that in terms of the broader, microtransactions are bad and this, that, the other, I look at it and say, well, yes, you need to do something that is going to have recurring income if you're going to be supporting these servers, like you were saying, or if you are going to want continuous updates, people need to be paid to program and do art and development for these updates. So there's always certainly a balance, and there are more ethical ways to incentivize and reward spending in your game continuously over time. Some are much more ethical than others, but it's an interesting balance because at the same time, free-to-play games simply did not exist, rewinding the clocks by 25 years, and that being able to experience games as a medium, as an entertainment, and as an art form was inherently gated by finances. And if you did not have... People talk about, games today are so expensive. Not true. You look at what the price of an NES was after adjusting for inflation. It is way more than a Switch 2 or a PS5, and it's not close.
I have done the math on that, and games increase in price like well below inflation. With the obvious caveat and exception for games where gambling is a very significant part of the model, and even then, it's not for everyone. Like that's
Yeah.
part of what has made them such an interesting and unethical model.
Yeah.
Is that they are really relying on taking advantage of the fact that a certain percentage of people can't control themselves when confronted with gambling.
Yes.
And that's really
And that's the frustrating thing, because I'm super glad that kids today are able to, if their family is not in, a great financial situation, but they have a medium level PC that they can download something like Genshin Impact, even run it at not necessarily optimum frame rate, but that they can play that game, they can have a good time, they can experience those characters, that story, insert other free-to-play games here, even if it's just, someone is able to play Candy Crush and just do that for a little bit a day for fun and not have to worry about investing money in it. But that is because they are then subsidized by the whales, by the people who spend a lot, and that you are 100% correct that in a not insignificant portion of microtransaction games, it is, like you said, exploitative and directly targeted to try and get the whales who aren't able to control themselves. It's not offering, here's really high value, here's something that is good and well done or unique and customizable, but that you feel either the FOMO or the pressure or other external factors as making these purchases and microtransactions obligatory in some percentage of people's minds.
Yeah, and it is a frustrating question, right? That like game development costs money, and I am pretty on the side of cheap indie games on my preferences, right? I am far more impressed and intrigued and willing to talk up, let me take a look around here. Golf with Friends, or Opus Magnum, or Terra Nil, than I am, let's say, Apex Legends or Overwatch.
Yeah.
Even though I've played those games quite a bit, and I don't even hate them. It's just they kind of max out at okay to me, even though they are clearly far more expensive, far more polished products. And they're the ones with the much more exploitative monetization system. They're the ones that have a much more obvious way in which I can just flatly call them evil. And yes, there's no like truly ethical way to make money. By the way, I'm having a subathon starting next week. And there's no truly like ethical way to make money and to like get ahead in these things, but at the same time, we like there is a point in trying to judge people for doing like it truly egregious stuff, like like what Fortnite does, and then there's also but we do have to confront the reality that eventually people have to make enough money to pay for the dev time.
Yeah.
If nothing else. And there are some games where I've spent more than 100% of the sale price of Dwarf Fortress on Dwarf Fortress. Back when Dwarf Fortress was not purchasable at all, I think I sent them like $50. Just because I like their product and I want them to make more of it, and I think we need more Dwarf Fortress in this world. But Dwarf Fortress has like a different type of development cycle and a different relationship with development than most of again, an Apex or an Overwatch.
And naturally it's going to be, like you were saying, different. Just how much does it cost to make something that is like Dwarf Dwarf Fortress is going to have had a much cheaper development cycle because fewer people were working on it, and the resources that went into it don't demand the same level of money to make sure that people get paid or that something hits that break-even point for basic sanity of business. And even, obviously, once it goes into different aspects of profit and how funds are reinvested, many complexities therein, but it is very clear and easy to see how we get to where we get to in these many different scenarios. And I'll very much agree, like you were saying, it's a lot easier, certainly, to get on the bandwagon and want to really hype up smaller ones, especially because they are smaller. But at the same time, one thing that is very positive and very exciting about modern gaming is the barrier to entry has plummeted. It used to be, back in the day, if just sheer production distribution, minimum order quantities, because everything was physical. And that I'm a big advocate of game preservation, but I will also say I think digital is one of the most important positive things to have ever happened to gaming, because without digital, if everything is physical, you don't have a thriving indie scene. It's just not possible, because you need to have tens of thousands of units. The pre-production, it has to all be done. Then there's the shipping, there's the stocking, there's the distributors, there's the manufacturers, and all of that. And that simply can't be done if you're a small 2-3 person team. If you haven't somehow gotten an investment of multiple millions of dollars, you can't make your game. You can't physically get the game out for it to be played and bought in the first place. But with it being digital and having it these storefronts like Steam, Epic, app stores, etc., now someone can have, all right, me and maybe a couple of my buddies put this together and have it out there, and we only need to sell it for a couple bucks, or maybe we put it out there for a bit more, who knows. But that's just something that was fundamentally impossible prior to really 2005, 10-ish.
Yeah, it's, and geez, I remember when the orange box was physically distributed, it had a parallel digital distribution, and it feels like such a game changer in retrospect.
Yeah.
It feels like such a huge difference, and it's I think it's been very impressive, and I've loved it. I understand why people are really want to have more emphasis on the digital, on the physical distribution, but like, man, I really appreciate being able to get a lot of digital copies of a lot of things, especially because I'm a New Yorker. I have so little space.
Yeah. As always, there's balance to be had in things, and over time, balance is sometimes lost. But I do generally think that over time, even in business, you get regression to the mean. Like we were saying with many things, that it seems a bit trite to say, but the market and people making decisions does matter. That people said, oh, the Switch 2 is too expensive, not going to buy it. It sold a ton. Nintendo currently has no incentive to change their price structure. On the other hand, at least based on early reports, game code cards are not being accepted as a substitute for physical releases. People aren't rebelling against the idea of having a physical and a digital release, but people are rebelling against the idea of a fake physical release, so to speak. If it's not the actual game on the card, just give it to me digitally. Don't try and fake me out. I don't care about the box. I want the functional benefit of having this game on a card.
Yep. I want to be able to play the game even if on a computer that never ever touches the internet.
Yes. And I think that it is correct to have both. That I think, I very much agree that I think a code card is fundamentally a foolish product. I think there's plenty of other ways to incentivize or justify, even if you have to increase costs because, whatever materials and costs have come up, you can make other benefits to justify that cost. And those aren't things that the digital purchasers will get. There's a way to do this. A code card isn't the answer, and I'm hoping that we will continue to see code cards be rejected, because I think there are solutions out there, and that's just not one of them.
That's a silly one. That's a silly one. So I said that I thought I would be good for 4 hours. I was wrong. I am starting to fade.
All good, man. All good.
Yeah.
This has been so much fun, even for the 3 that we're at. So, goodness knows, left to our own devices and normal circumstance, we could go a lot longer.
Yeah.
But I definitely do hope to be able to chat more sometime. You'll definitely be hearing from me for the anniversary marathon in a bit.
I'm looking forward to it.
I just have 2 last questions I ask all the guests, if I can get you for just a last couple of minutes.
Absolutely. I want to give you the minute. Yeah.
The first is, do you have any goals for the rest of 2025? We are now about halfway through September, so a little bit left. And like you mentioned, you do have that subathon, so I'm not going to quite let you say that that's your goal. But please do plug the subathon as you go through.
I will plug
goals.
the subathon. I will plug. So, I may as well say my structure, right? My structure, my operation is that my affiliate anniversary is the 20th of October, and so I am starting a subathon on the 22nd, basically a month going into it. I have a new model, I have new backgrounds, I have new redeems. I am very, very excited for this, and I am hoping to make it a truly... I'm hoping to clear my previous subathons. This will be my 3rd subathon. I actually like doing subathons. I actually do enjoy them. I know a lot of people who really don't enjoy them and find them very frustrating. I have enjoyed them. I have had a nice time with them.
I could have a whole hour-long conversation on the philosophy of subathons and different ways to do them. That's for another day.
That's for another day. This is going to be the days limited rather than running clock method, because I have done both, and the running clock method I think was just kind of stupid. It was a lot of technical hassle, and it didn't add very much, and it made it kind of confusing for people. I want to... simpler is better, I have found. And
my charity marathons are structured non-clock based. It is 2 days, 12 hours each, and we have the goals and such there.
Yep.
I'm not bothering with a timer.
Yep. Simple. Keep it simple. So the model does have a slightly different outfit, and so I am curious to see how people respond to it. So my goal, so to speak, is, other than do it well, it feels weird to call like hitting a subathon quantity a goal for myself. That's a goal for other people to do to me. I am the object in that goal, not the subject. So that feels strange to me. My goal is to understand a little bit more about my appeal and what people are looking for, and I think that revealing the new model and seeing how people respond to it during the subathon will be revelatory, will help
a journey
guide...
of self-discovery, if anything.
Well, not just self-discovery, but marketing discovery, right? This will be market research. I hope to have a firmer understanding of what to do with myself going forward. I do want to complete all of my subathon redeems. I still have subathon redeems left over from last year. From my first subathon that have not been cleared. I've cleared out like 90%. I've not been a complete scumbag about this. But
I've done most of mine. I still need to do an ASMR stream.
I find the ASMR actually kind of fun, but
I definitely have fun. I just need to figure out a concept either. In the past I've done a lot of different things, but I do need to figure out what I'll be doing for whispering in ASMR.
Ideas that I've had for a while that I thought would be really fun would be me and some other people do ASMR and play a non-relaxing game while doing ASMR the entire time. Play again like Overwatch or Marvel Rivals, and just never could take our voices above this. But yes, that's not actually
whispering Among Us, and if you reach a certain decibel threshold, everyone automatically must vote for you.
That would be pretty funny. I actually have never played Among Us.
It's worth playing.
Weirdly enough, I don't like lying.
That's fair.
And it stresses me out. So that is my main one, is survive the subathon. That will take me through late October. I don't really particularly have any. Oh, one other goal that I have for the year. One other goal that is actually my goal for the year is launch an actual decent form of doing calligraphy commissions. I'm planning on doing it via Ko-fi. I currently do take calligraphy commissions. I've taken a couple, but it's really just like DM me and we'll talk about it.
I think VGen might be a more cohesive platform for that, but
it might be. I mean, the options were like Etsy, Ko-fi, and VGen. I am not being very VTuber specific.
Okay.
VGen does have a lot of benefits though. Etsy would be the most intuitive one, but Etsy also charges you just to have a storefront. So not super keen on that.
Yeah.
And it's not super good for custom orders. Whereas Ko-fi is a little bit better for that. VGen, I might do VGen anyway, even though it wasn't originally part of the plan. So yes. And I've been writing some blog posts because I write outside of VTubing. I am a writer, but I don't really feel like putting my VTuber thoughts under my writer name, under my flesh name, under my government name. And also a lot of the stuff that I was thinking about writing is like pretty ephemeral thoughts on gaming that like doesn't really justify going around trying to find publications that are interested in paying me for it. I just think it would be nice because people ask for a lot of my thoughts pretty frequently, and I'm a much more organized and coherent thinker when I'm writing. And I think that having some blog posts that I can point to and be like, yeah, I think this, but if you want like the more deep version of what I think about how do we improve as streamers, I've got a blog post about that. So that is what my goals are for the year. Are number 1, survive the subathon. Number 2, figure out some more things about how people relate to my model and my content. Number 3, launch that storefront. Number 4, blog.
There we go. Some good goals, man. And I think they're all very realistic ones, that they're very separate. They aren't ones that are going to entirely overlap each other and sort of prevent each other, that they'll each take time. But I think those are very achievable, and I'm looking forward to see the rest of the year for you.
If one of them fails, it doesn't cause the others to fail instantaneously. Yeah, there's not a lot of... what's the word I'm looking for here? Not contingency.
Dependencies.
Dependency. There we go. Thank you.
And the last question I ask all my guests is, what does being a VTuber mean to you? And that is not the philosophical question of what does it mean to be a VTuber. There's a lot of different ways to be a VTuber, and we've discussed a lot of those variants and similar concepts of variants tonight. But different people get different things from VTubing. So for you, Almantas, what does being a VTuber mean to you?
What do I get out of it? Why am I VTube?
Some people say, it lets me get in touch with my inner child. It lets me be someone I can't be in real life. Others have a more clinical approach and say, I like my model, it's cool, but it's a tool for me as an entertainer. I don't necessarily feel this deep emotional resonance with my model. I think it's great, and I chose this design and I stand by it, but I might not identify with it in the way that some might, and there's shades between and beyond those.
Mine is a pretty practical, and I am on the practical side on this one. I wanted to do... I come from teaching. I come from teaching and to a certain extent political activism, and I wanted to do something that wasn't political activism, that was art. I wanted to be doing some art, and I am self-conscious about my appearance. I am quite self-conscious about what I look like, and VTubing allowed me to basically be an actor without being constrained by my physical appearance. That is fundamentally what it is. It is a liberation from that self-consciousness and from that concern on my part. So yeah, that's what I would say. It's a way to do something that I want to do without paying some of the prices I don't want to pay.
And that makes a lot of sense, both in terms of your background and other things that you've talked about, being a professor and doing things that even physical appearance and the way you see yourself aside, the simple matter of you might not want folks to necessarily recognize you, and to have that layer of anonymity makes sense on top of all that. But then you look at your content, that hands are still fine. You're totally good. You like doing things where you can have that physical representation. Like you mentioned, you wanted something that it could be a creative and fun outlet, being something of an actor. And certainly, given the background specifically of being a professor, someone who stands up in front of a large group of folks and not necessarily entertains, but talks and is being active and presenting, which is really, in a nutshell, what streaming and content creation is. So the interest there that led you to be a professor of really any discipline makes sense, in that you would want to potentially end up streaming or doing content creation of any discipline. So the flow and pipeline there is very logical. And I always ask that at the end of the show, because while I never know what the answers will be, the answers make sense. And here we are with yours.
Yeah. All right.
This has been so much fun. The actual last question, which I told you ahead of time also, is who would you like us to raid? Do you have somebody in mind for us?
Oh, geez. It's actually very funny. Well, we literally, a friend of mine literally just started while we were here.
Oh, perfect. Better than the opposite. I can't tell you how many times folks have said, oh, there's this person I've been wanting to raid, and they just ended stream. Give me a second. I need to find another one. So who are we raiding?
Let's go with Sybil Cole. Let's go with Sybil. I like Sybil. She's a sweetheart. She's going to be on her starting soon screen, so that'll be kind of funny. I have linked you to her.
Perfect. Sybil Cole. Well, thank you, Almantas, and thank you to everybody who's been tuning in for any amount of time. Thank you so much to the folks both on Twitch and YouTube. If for some absurd reason you are not already following Almantas, please be sure to correct that. Let me get him a shout out right here. Almantas VT. It's you. Yes, right there. And links are down in the channel panels for folks watching live here on Twitch. They're also over on YouTube right now, actually, since we're streaming there. That's one of the very convenient things. So be sure to check him out. And if you enjoyed this and want more shows like this, I'm just VTuber Talk here on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, all places. I can't promise you anything of consistency, but if you follow me, you'll be able to find out when I'm doing shows. So hopefully you had a good time, and if nothing else, like I said, be sure to check out Almantas and see his upcoming new model debut and subathon next month. So Almantas, thank you so much for being here. This has been so much fun, and I know we can talk a lot more in the future, but for now, we're going to let folks go, and be sure to let Sybil know that Almantas sent you all. So spam some of his emotes. I don't have any of my own, but do whatever. I guess, what should the raid message be?
Oh, I don't even know.
I'm never good at these. This is one of the things. After 175 episodes, I'm still terrible at raid messages. We can go with the simple talk show raid. Just very simple talk show raid. So thank you again, everybody. We're going to be raiding into Sybil. Again, Almantas, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your night, everybody, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.